I would like to mention from the beginning that this is a special course. It will not look like the normal courses that is delivered in any type of academic, let's say, institute, because this is a master's degree that you are going through, and this course will give you the information that you need in order to write your master thesis. Basically, if I want to say something in order to motivate you, I have to tell you that attending courses and giving exams, it's a characteristics of a bachelor's degree. So what a master's degree is, or what is the difference between a master's degree and a bachelor's degree? The difference is the course that we are doing today. So writing up your master thesis is going to make you to get your master's degree. It is maybe the first time that you will face a project in this level and in this magnitude. And my main task today is to give you to give you good practices in order to follow up a nice path and have the very basic steps that you have to start doing before you start your master thesis.
So, as you know, you have to complete, after you have done the 18 courses, you have 3 options. You can do a master thesis, you can do a master project and business plan. Okay, so you have these 3 options. Every option has a different criteria. Okay, we have communicated with you already. Okay, in your email, so please look at it carefully. And today, Professor Tryfon will be talking through all the 3 options. Now, one of the things is asked by students. You can ask me because let's look at if you have any question related to the 3 options. One of the things you need to understand, after you have submitted your master thesis or master project or master thesis topic approval form, there's a form that you need to submit, correct? So when you are ready, only submit this form. So attending today, it doesn't mean you have to start the master thesis tomorrow. Doesn't mean you have to start after 2 weeks. If you are not ready and you say you want to start in October, no problem. If you want to start in December, not a problem. But you have certain time limit, okay? So it means if you have decided you're able to start, let's say your master thesis, you have completed all the courses, or even if you have not completed all the courses, you can start. You say, I would like to start. Then you have a topic approval form. You submit this form, okay? And the moment it was approved, that's when your time starts, okay? So master thesis is 3 months. Project is 2 months, and you have the master business plan is also 2 months. Now you will see today, the master thesis and the master project is very similar. The only difference, I believe, is 2 chapters. The master thesis has 7 chapters, and the master project has 2 chapters. And the reason why Geneva gives you an option of doing a master project, because it is easier to do it in terms of collecting data. Okay, so you can go to your company, you look at a problem with maybe strategies or leadership, anything, and then you can actually collect data from the employee itself. Okay? And it is easier to collect the data. Now this next one, the business plan, is even easier because you have a course, MBA 602, correct? Yes. So when you have completed the MBA 602, you have to do a business plan. Does anybody have completed the MBA 602? Yes. Yeah, so remember, you got a really nice marking rubric. A long marking, like I think 19 pages or 12 pages, I can't remember exactly, a marking rubric, and you have to follow when you're doing the business plan. And the good news for you guys, we have gotten approval from Geneva to use that one even for the master business plan. So they have not changed much. They have accepted our marking rubric. Even they use it in Kazakhstan, Barcelona, and in Geneva, and they use it also in Dubai. So we are using the same marking rubric, but there are certain differences. Of course, it is a master business plan, not just only a business plan for MBA 602. Okay? And make sure you follow that one, and you won't have any problem submitting. You will have also an opportunity to see a lot of samples. Okay, so in these next 2 days, you have many samples here. You can have a look, and you can decide on if you want to go with the master thesis, or you want to go with the business plan, or you want to go with the master project. Now, in your transcript, after you have completed, in your transcript is mentioned is master dissertation. So even if you've done a project, even if you've done a business plan, it's still going to give you a master dissertation on your transcript. Okay? All right. Okay, so that's all. And do you have any question?
Good morning.
Yes.
Good morning.
That's good. Okay, so if you don't have a question, I think probably start. And in the next 2 days, it is more as a workshop. Okay, you see, we have flip charts around the room, so we will be working a lot in the group after his explanation. And you can see the study materials is quite thick today. Okay, so this is very important for you when you are working on the next 2 days to have a complete understanding of the requirements for master thesis project and also business plan. So enjoy the class, okay? Have a great day. And just
Okay, so as we mentioned that what makes a master's degree is actually the master's dissertation that you have to do in the end of your studies. And this is mainly what we are going to talk about today. As you already heard, you have different options, and this depends on what looks more interesting from your side, what you think you're gonna do in a better way. And it's a good thing because when you have more options, you will see that you can concentrate on different areas in your master's degree. Like if you would like to go more to the business side, you can go with a business plan, or if you want to go more to the academic side and the research, you can go to a master thesis and something in between, I would say, the master project. But let's start describing all these options that we have. So what are the types of deliverables that you have to go through? First of all, the master thesis. It is considered one of the biggest deliverables or the most important deliverables that you can develop, and that's why you need 3 months in order to implement it from the moment that you get your approval. That's why it is important to know that from the moment that you get your approval, you will have these 3 months available, since you are also professional people, and you may have to find the time in order to do all the tasks which are necessary. For master thesis, it has to be an individual task where you have to deliver it by yourself. You cannot have a team of 2 persons. And the document should contain around 25,000 words, just to give you a rough estimation of the extent of the document that you have to deliver. And there is a prerequisite that I think for most of you it's okay. You have to attend the academic writing class and prepare your research proposal. The second option that you have, it is the master project. The master project, it should be implemented in 2 months. Why? Because in a master project we go in the same way with master thesis, but we concentrate usually in the area of business, and most of the time it will be better for you to do something related to your business as well, or your area of expertise. It can be implemented in groups of 2 students, and the size of the document, it can be 15,000 words. The same prerequisite applies here as well for the academic writing course. And your third option, it is the master business plan, where in this case again, you will have 2 months in order to implement it. And there is no limit related to the words that you have to use there, and you can implement it again individually or in groups of 2 students. And the prerequisite here is the entrepreneurship course 602. So, for the final report statement, it states that only one deliverable is needed from your side. There is no distinction anywhere about the type of the dissertation that you submitted. So your final mark says that you submitted dissertation and it is graded in a certain level. And only if you need, you can ask or you can submit, let's say, to anyone who would like to ask or see your master thesis, the type or the document that you have delivered in the future. So, do you have any question regarding these options? Is anything that you would like to ask me?
What exactly is a master plan?
A business plan.
Business plan.
A business plan. Have you already did the entrepreneurship course? Did you attend the 602? You did it. So you had to submit there a master business plan, a business plan. So now consider this something bigger than what you have done there, where you will have to be careful all the other aspects that we're going to discuss today. Okay, so it is a business plan, but it has to be on the size of a master dissertation. So, okay, let's continue. As you realize, you have a very small book in front of you, but a fairly large student material. The reason is that this course today, it will be more like a workshop where you will be the stars as well, and you will have to give me with a lot of your understanding and opinion and work that you will have to do through the course. So I'm very sure that it will be very interesting for you, and you will have a very good time, where you will realize that the task that we are delivering today, it is not difficult to understand, but is difficult to implement. That's why you will have a lot of time to practice and come up with mainly questions and good practices that we will have to address today. So when we talk about the master thesis, we are talking about a research. And research is something very important, and is happening usually in academia, in master or PhD courses. And for us, if we would like to put up a definition, it is a systematic collection, analysis, and interpretations of data. And the reason we do that is because we want to get a certain answer, or we would like to solve a certain problem. So, based on this basic definition, we would like to set up the aims that we have for our master thesis. So, our master thesis generally tries to obtain practical experience in research and analysis. So, you will have the time to do it in reality, what we call a research process. We have to demonstrate independent academic originality. You have to demonstrate critical thinking. We will have to have skills which are related to problem solving, practical and written skills of English as well, and well organization and management of your time and the tasks that you have to go through. Where is appropriate to develop skills in community service as well. And finally, you will see that this will help you, this course will help you to differentiate some special abilities that you may have as well. So, some general considerations that you have to, and good practices that we have to keep in mind when we are developing our master thesis is the way that we write. When you write a master thesis, you defend a certain idea. You defend your your outcomes and your research results. So try to avoid the word I did, or I will do, or we will do, and this way of writing. Why? Because you don't want, through your thesis, to challenge the reader, because you have to remember that this thesis is going to an examiner who is going through the material that you explained there. And it is a good thing not to show off your personal opinion or your personality, but mainly to use very good arguments with very good background basis in order to convince somebody that what you say there is correct. In order to do this in a kind and nice way, you can use what we call, you can refer in the third person, whatever you explain. So you will say, for example, this research will do that. So you talk about your work in the third person. This makes your text a little bit more academically professional, I would say. We don't write in the first person, we write in the third person. Also, take your time to prepare your paper in a perfect format. Make sure that you go through again and again, and don't submit mistakes which are obvious that will make, let's say, the impression to the reader that the work that you have done is not very well prepared. Let's go directly to the content of a master thesis. Maybe, I don't know if it is very easy for you to look on the board, but you have it in front of you. So we start with a cover page. All the things that we will discuss right here are absolutely necessary, and you need to have them in your thesis. So a cover page, a declaration of authorship, acknowledgements, your table of contents, and then your abstract or executive summary. And after that, you start your document with the first chapter, which is the introduction, the second chapter, which is the literature review. Then you go to your methodology and the summary of your empirical study, the presentation of your data, your explanation and analysis of your data, the discussion and interpretation of your findings, of your research, and then the conclusions and the recommendations that you have to do from those theses. The end of the thesis always contains references or the bibliography, your appendix, and list of tables and list of figures. There are certain rules that we have to follow and be careful. So try to use correct English. For non-native speakers, this is not an easy thing, which means that you will have to spend a lot of time to go through your English and improve it. Also, you have to remember that a master thesis, it is not a book like a novel. It is a technical document, an academic technical document. So the important thing there is to be simple. You have to be direct. You have to make sure that when somebody reads this, in the smallest amount of words, he can get the maximum amount of information. So this is very important to remember. Although usually when we start writing our thesis, having in front of us 25,000 words that we have to put there, we try to be, in the beginning especially, quite verbal. Means use a lot of words in order to cover up let's say, the limit of the words, but in reality, you will realize that as soon as you have done a valid research you will need more than 25,000 words in order to explain it. So from the beginning, try to keep simple, direct, and clear to your writing. Try to avoid, of course, anything related to slang language. Try to avoid any informal writing, inappropriate writing. Surround everything which is coming from other sources when you copy them as it is in quotations, which is also important, to reference the sources that you are using, and try to use the single space quotations. Avoid to use long direct quotations. It is not nice, let's say, to have something more than 3 or 4 lines as a quotation. So keep this in mind as a rough estimate of how big is the size of a quotation. It is usually nice to use a quotation in order to start a discussion or to state something very important where you would like to surround this with the rest of your arguments. Do not use abbreviations a lot, or try to state from the beginning what these abbreviations mean and use the same thing throughout the document. We will see that for any type of abbreviations that you will use, we can have a separate table where we explain all these things. And also make sure that you cite the sources and any paraphrased information and ideas that you get from other sources. The document that you deliver has to be, it has to use a certain format. So try to use Times New Roman, maximum size of characters 12, and single space.
I don't quite understand that one. Cite the source or any reference.
Yes, we have to do with citations or references. Okay, so anything that you use that is coming from another source, you have to mention what is the source that you are using.
Yeah, I understand, but what does it mean, reference information? So if I...
Usually, when you take something from another source, it can have 2 ways of taking it. You can copy-paste. In case of a copy-paste, you have to use quotations, okay? So in order to say that these sayings are coming from this source in this exact format. But in most of the cases, when you read something, you understand it, you want to write it in your own way. This means paraphrase. And maybe you would like to summarize or use combine a couple of sources in the same sentence or in the same paragraph. And the main thing that we say here is always cite your sources from where you...
If I paraphrase, I still have to mention where I took the information
Yes,
from.
yes.
But it won't be citation. I don't need to put the brackets.
You don't have to put quotations.
Yes.
Okay, so it is in your document, but you have to say where you got it from.
Okay, so where do I put in brackets in the end, or?
We will see when we will do the referencing in the end of these slides that we have here, that we will use the Harvard citation or referencing style. So it is a certain style that you use in order to put these citations in your document, because actually you do this in 2 phases. First, you use the citation, so you say based on, I don't know, Abdurrahman 2015, which means that it was a research from Mr. Abdurrahman in 2015. This and this and this and this is happening. In the end of your document, you're going to have the reference list where we will have exactly the information of where is this research exists and all the details of the research. So we're going to use the Harvard style for citation in reality.
But if I'm sort of summarizing, like I read, I don't know, the article, and I just say that such and such happens, blah, 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 you know, I still need to, it's all my words, my thoughts on that. I still need to put that article where I got the idea from. That's what I mean.
Keep in mind always this on your thesis. That, I mean, this is a little bit of a joke, but it's reality. The examiner or the person who reads your thesis does not consider you as a valid source. Okay? So as soon as you say to me that the weather is going to be good tomorrow, I don't believe you. So in order for you to increase the strength of your sayings, you have to support it from other sources that they are considered valid. And they are considered valid because they went through some phases of peer reviewing or acceptance, or because they were published in very special journals and so on. So you want to use their sayings in order to support your ideas. So the more of citations you have there, the more valid is the information that you put there. So if you tell me that tomorrow it will have a very nice weather because of these people who says about that, then I believe you because I respect the persons that you are referencing. You understand me? This is very important. Usually, we don't want to, let's say, we are afraid, let's say, that if we reference a lot, somebody will say that this is not your thesis, this is a collection of other people's opinions. But in reality, this is research. Research means that you know what all the others are saying, and there's going to be a small, or let's say an area, where you will have to come up with your results, and this is the main part where there will be no references, but it will be your valid information coming from all the previous material that you present there. More or less, you get me? Okay. So keep this always in mind. References are good. The more you have, the depth, the deeper the knowledge that you have in this area. It is difficult in the end to, let's say, to control and manage all this information, but I will show you some tools that you can use in order to manage this information. Okay, so we said that we will have 25,000 words. Coming automatically from Microsoft Word, you can see how many words you write there, but you have to know that we don't consider some parts of your thesis, like your annex or appendices, or information that exists in figures, bibliography, references, and so on, does not count in the 25,000 words. Roughly, for you to understand the size of a thesis, it will be around 50 pages, but this also depends on how many figures you're going to have, charts, and so on. When you do a master thesis, you may have to defend it. That depends on policies. So defend a master thesis means that you do a presentation in order to convince an audience that what you have in your thesis, it is valid. Usually, in order to implement your thesis, you may get the help from a supervisor, where is a person that will more or less will tell you the same things that we say in this room today, but it will be specifically they're going to be specific for your project, for your task, and it will help you usually a lot. Now, we already mentioned the structure of a master thesis, and our task right now is to start one by one all these issues, discuss them, see examples, and try to do from our own some exercises. So the first thing that we have in this dissertation is the title and the front cover page. Selecting a title, it is an important issue. Probably for those of you who complete the academic writing proposal, you may went through, let's say, the problem of defining a nice title for your research. A good title always should be short, accurate, and concise. So try to, let's say, to think again and again and work, spend a lot of time when you decide the title of your thesis. This title is going to have also all the search keywords that may be needed for someone who would like to search and read your work. So the better the selection of the words, the easiest for somebody to find your work, and this is for your benefit. So you will provide the brief descriptions or a descriptive title, and you can even have a piece of your research question inside your title. It should make the central objective of the study clear to the reader, and if possible, think of an informative but a catchy title in order to make it more interesting for somebody to start dealing and reading of your thesis. So a nice title, it will pique the reader's interest, and it will give him a very good impression for your document. And having a good impression from the beginning, it's a great advantage for yourself. So how a cover page will look like, based on the things that you have to follow, and you will also receive these logos. In the beginning, you need to have the logo of the school, and then using Times New Roman size 14, you have to put up the let's say the information like the project title, and with Times New Roman 18 bold, you have to write the title itself, and you have to follow this format, which if you would like to go through an exact example, is this one. So we see that we have the logo, and then we have the title, which says exploring the relationship between the effectiveness of project management and JP Company project success. So in the title, he's trying to make it not very long and very accurate. So it is a Master in Business Administration project in this example. What I have is not a thesis, it's a project, and is the name of the school. What is the Master in Business Administration International Management, the title of your master's, and then we have the authors, and then we follow that with the name of your supervisors and those who, let's say, agree and approve your thesis. In the end, always we have the date of the submission. So the title, the cover page, it's a fairly easy task to do. The difficult thing is to select the title. I have for you 4 titles on the board that we can go through and discuss. So the first title says Measuring Managerial Leadership Styles and employees' job satisfaction in Eastern Province of KSA General Study. What you have to be careful in a title. First of all, you have to say what is the area of your research. So in this case, what is the area of the research? The area of the research. It has to do with measuring manager leadership. Okay, so it has to do with leadership. Nice. Now, leadership, it's a very general and broad topic. Your title has to concentrate the will. You can study a very broad task that can take you 3 years to do it. But you have to consider that the task that you are delivering here is a task which has to be implemented in 3 months. So you have to make sure from your title, even from your title, that you narrow down the area of your research in order for you to have a successful research. So that was nice. Let's go to the next title. Critical success factor for ERP implementation in Saudi Arabia. Do you understand? Of course, titles are always related to the area that you work, and maybe some of you don't know what ERP means. But can you understand, let's say, the topic that we have here?
This is related to supply chain, I believe. IT. Supply chain, IT.
It is an IT, let's say, related project. Yeah? Okay, yes. So we are looking about critical factors that leads to success. When we do what? When we implement ERP systems in Saudi Arabia. So again, we have 3, let's say, main things. The area and exactly which part of this area and the geographical location of this thing. Do you have any objection? Do you like to tell me your opinion? Yes, on the topic. You would like to have something different?
It's a bit not narrow, it's wide, like it's not more specific.
Can we specify specific industry like telecommunications, I don't know,
Okay, like can we make it more
healthcare?
narrow?
We can make it more narrow, yes. Can we specify making narrow, so can we discuss, let's say, the business area that we would like to refer ERP? Yes, why not? I would say that is even better. I would like to mention a mistake here. And the mistake, it has to do with this abbreviation, ERP. Although we see that the first one we avoided by setting up the abbreviation on the title, where you can do this, maybe if the abbreviation is that famous that everybody knows about it, to use the abbreviation as well, it is to the benefit of your title. But use only the abbreviation, it can be confusing.
Like I wanted to ask what is ERP?
Yes, exactly. That's why you don't know what is ERP. Although if I tell you what is ERP, it doesn't mean that you will understand, but definitely it is there, and you know that it's not talking about entertainment, relations, I don't know, pathways. You understand me? It is enterprise resource planning systems, but it would be a very good thing to have it in the title. Although it adds 3 words there, it is not that big title in order to avoid it. Is it clear? Okay. Factors which influence customers in Riyadh to purchase online. So what we have here,
Purchase what? It's not here.
so purchase online. First of all, we can go deeper if we want to talk about a certain area of, but also the study can be general. So we cannot really judge the title because we don't know what is inside this study, but it is a good thing for you to know that you can go in a more narrow definition or keep it as it is. Now, what is it doing? What is the important thing?
We are measuring the factors, specifying the factors.
Okay, which influence. So verbs in a title, it's a nice thing because they say exactly what we want to do. Okay?
But it could be written in different ways, like factors influencing customers instead of which influence.
Yes?
It would be like kind of paragraph, it's not like a title.
So when you write, yes, when you write your title, you want to keep the title in a more, let's say, specific or shorter without not being too verbal. So when you start saying which, of what, and some words in English like that, it may create a very big title, I agree, and sometimes it's confusing, sometimes it's not very nice to have it as a title, but I agree with your comment as well. And again, here we have also the geographical definition of the geographical location of this research. And if you don't have anything else to comment, let's go to the last one. Study of factors affecting patient satisfaction on a specialized ophthalmology centers, KSA Eastern region. So first of all, here we see that we go even in a more specific area related to the area of our research. And what this study is doing? Studying the factors so it is related to medicine. Okay, so do we have a verb there? Okay, so we want to find what is affecting. And what we study? So we study the satisfaction, and we use the verb affecting to see how, yeah?
Can we use the word of study of? Beginning of the study of,
Uh, yes, you can, but you can avoid it if you see that you have too many words, because it is obvious a study, yeah?
Yeah, basically what the title is saying is that your study is on satisfaction, but you have the variables which they change, which are the factors affecting that satisfaction.
Very good.
Yeah.
So because research, we will realize it has to do with variables that we study, and for certain research questions and hypotheses, we will see that if we have a part of our research questions and maybe some of the variables which are going to be important and they're going to be studied in this study, then it is a nice title that we have there. So now I would like all of you to go into the study material in exercise 1, and in order to make it more interesting, I would like for you to work in teams, and we can consider as teams every 4 chairs. So those who are in front can turn back, and you can, let's say, set up teams of 4 people and try to answer what is in the first exercise. So in the first exercise, in groups of 4, I would like you to give me 2 titles of a potential master dissertation. It can be for a thesis, it can be for a project, whatever you like. You will see that there are flip charts around the room, and what you will have to do in the end, each team will use one flip chart to write one of the titles. Okay, so there are things that needs to be in your document, like legal issues that has to be clearly specified and take the responsibility. And this has to do with the declaration of authorship. Every project behind the cover page, it has this declaration of authorship. If you read it, it is more or less making you to sign the agreement that all the information that you have there, it is your responsibility and your writing. Okay, it's coming from you. So take care, because this document will put you against legal actions when you have the problem of plagiarism, which means that you are using material that you don't mention the source where you got this material. Okay? So this thing, it should be in your project. The document is fixed. You just copy-paste this document to agree that you don't copy-paste. Okay? Okay with the declaration of authorship?
Yes.
The next thing, acknowledgements. Very important. You have to remember that this book that you will create with all this information will follow you for the rest of your life in your library. So it will be very nice also thing to have over there an honest and let's say a declaration where you would like to thank all the people that help you on this area, to conduct this project. So in the acknowledgements, usually we use this type of sentences. We would like to thank people who help us to do the research, and we say, for example, first of all, I would like to thank this person or that person through that helped me, or what was his contribution in your research period. I have an example here of an acknowledgement. Can you go through it very fast and give me the very important points? Tell me, for example, read it right now and tell me in this acknowledgement what the author is expressing. Can we do it? If you cannot read from there, if it's in front of you as well. So I would like your opinion. Not your opinion, your...
You want to succeed the course.
So saying thank you to his supervisor, maybe you consider it...
Only about it.
Yeah. If you can copy paste this, if it is a copy paste or not, yeah? Try not to put his mother. I'll just give you 2 minutes to go through this document.
Second paragraph, he and Mark Hatton, maybe you need to specify who that person is, you know, like he acknowledges this Dr. Brahim, but, you know...
He doesn't say what was the contribution about,
No,
yeah, that's...
so he doesn't say who that person Mark Hatton is, you know,
Yeah.
like if he's a lecturer, if he's a doctor, or he's a teacher, you know, he can be, a doorman who opened the door to let him to says the...
Is it necessary? Actually, why you do this is for those people that you reference there, so they know what they are.
So it's also due to Dr. Brahim, and then, and there is, he put the name of that other person, but, the way that it is built doesn't sound right to me.
No, the sentence in this paragraph is wrong, yeah?
Yeah,
Because is wrong, not because it doesn't say who was this guy, but what was the reason behind that this, or what was the contribution behind it. Yeah? Exactly. I agree. The examples we see here, you can never consider something perfect, yeah? There is always things that, because it's real examples what I'm using here, and that's the benefit for us. Okay, usually the acknowledgement will make you happy and to show your, let's say, your respect to the other people who help you, and also it will be very important for those people to see their names there under your research. Try to be generous. Don't consider that if somebody reads this acknowledgement will consider, yes, Dr. Brahim and Mr. Mark Hatton did the whole work for him. It doesn't go like that, because many times we would like to avoid, let's say, put names there, a lot of names, because maybe they will consider that we did nothing and the others help us just to do it. It doesn't go like that, okay? Is it clear? So, table of contents. For table of contents, I would like to say that, first of all, do we know what is a table of contents? It's a list of the information that we will find in the document, and basically we mention the section titles, the chapter titles, and some subsections. Let's see some rules that we have to follow here. We have to include the first level headers. So in a document we have headings, okay, or headers. These can be in different levels. That's why we see here the word first level. In the first level is the titles that divide our document into big sections. And this thing is happening usually with the chapter titles. Okay? So when we say chapter 1 introduction, this is a first level heading. When we say, for example, methodology, chapter 3, this is another level 1 header, first level header. Inside these sections, we have subdivisions. The subdivisions, we call them second level section titles. And these are inside the chapters. And then inside these sections, we can have the third level titles. Usually, we don't go beyond that, especially in a master thesis where we have a lot of information, a lot of pages, and so on. So you may have subsections of subsections, but you don't need to include them into your table of contents. Is it clear? So I would say, as a rule of thumb for you, that table of contents, you use 3 levels of division. An example here, which is which can be seen, is the abstract, chapter 1. You will see that chapter 1 has all the subsections starting from number 1. It goes like a little bit like the rooms in a hotel, yeah? So number 1 means chapter 1, and then we have the subsections 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. In chapter 2 here, what do you see? So we see heading, level 1, summary of literature review, and then we see 2 subsections, chapter objectives and literature review, and then we have a third level, subsections. Can you spot a mistake here? formatting problem, yeah? Or let's say not spelling mistake. Look this. Yeah, it doesn't look nice to have a title with a mistake on the if it is capital or not. Yeah. You have to make sure literature it needs a capital L. Yeah. So if somebody is looking at this, it seems that there was a careless mistake there. Make sure that in the end, when you go up to the printout or to print out your thesis, to avoid this type of mistakes. They are careless mistakes and they create a very bad impression. Okay, and they can happen very easily as well.
Do we have to print out and submit a soft copy?
Yes, you submit a soft copy and a hard copy. Okay. Yes, this can happen because let's say this topic, it is 2 pages. That's why this is happening. It is valid. Okay. Also, you see there is a certain format, dots, and then the pages aligned nicely. The pages are not going like this. Everything is aligned. Now, in order to achieve or to create your table of contents, do you know how to do it with MS Word? I realized from my experience from marking master thesis and supervising master thesis, not all of us, we know how to do this. That's why I will spend 5 minutes to give you the hint how to do this. So many of you already know, but for some of you that you don't know, because you will see what I will do here, you will have, let's say, the information to look and do the same thing. So I have here a video which is explaining how to do the Microsoft Word table of contents automatically, because the table of contents is the last thing that you're going to do in your thesis. It will be created automatically, but the important issue is that you will follow the rules from the beginning of your document, because if you try to do this thing in the end, it is not easy. Okay? So this is Microsoft Word, yeah? And on top here, you will see styles. The styles is what will help you in order to create your table of contents. You will realize that there are many styles that sometimes create confusion, but the important ones that you have to deal with is the normal text, which is your normal paragraphs, and then heading 1, heading 2, and heading 3. So let's say that I'm start writing a project, yeah? So I will have chapter 1, and then inside chapter 1 I will have intro of this chapter, and then 1, 2 I will have, let's say, details and so on. And then I start with chapter 2. Excuse me. Now, for chapter 1, I can do it like that to avoid inconsistency. I have to come and specify that this is can you see on the board? Okay. So I will specify that this is heading number 1, like that. Okay? So as soon as I do that, Microsoft Word is also formatting this thing. So it make it blue and size 16 and Calibri light, the format. And then this title is level 2. Why? Because it is inside the chapter. So I have to come here and say that this is heading 2. So it was formatted again. Now, I will do the same thing here, heading 2, and maybe inside the intro, I had something like question and let's say hypothesis. And these were subsections. So I will make them level 3. Below that, there was obviously some text that you write. This text should be normal. You see that this text is with style normal. Now, in order to specify your formatting, because the formatting that you have to use is for layer 3, size 12 Times New Roman. For layer 2, size 14, and for layer 1, size 16, and Times New Roman. Okay? So now I can come here and say, look, I want this to be a Times New Roman. I don't want it to be blue. I want it to be black. Okay? And the size 16 is perfect.
Instead of adjusting it every time, you can just basically modify the header itself.
Exactly. So this is what we're going to do. As soon as you put up the format that you like, you would like this format to go to all the heading 1, level 1 headings. So you can come here and say, right-click on the style and say, update heading to match the selection that I have right now. So what I'm telling you right now, I want this to go to all the headings. So you will realize that, where was the other chapter? Okay, so now, if I have another chapter here, this becomes chapter 2, it was chapter 2 and become 1. So I will come here and say heading, immediately it will take the format that I want, okay? The same thing can be done on other sections. Now what I'm gonna do, let's say that you write your document is quite big, and some sections go to other pages. So I just change the pages. And now I will come and add the table of contents on top of my table of contents. This task is very easy because you will go to the option references, and because you follow the right way of doing it by selecting the heading every time you were writing up a title, if you say put the table of contents and you select one style here, this will create your table of contents immediately. Okay? The great benefit behind that is you don't write it with your hand. Yes, that's why I would like to do this presentation for you. Be careful. Doing the table of contents in 2018 with your hands is a work that you should avoid. You have to do it automatically, because when you do it automatically, all the mistakes that you may do, especially with pages, will be avoided. Did you get it? The secret is, while you write your thesis, you specify the style. As soon as you specify the styles correctly, then creating the table of contents is 1 second. Now, in order to help you, because my demonstration was fast enough, and maybe if you don't do it by yourself, you cannot consider that you know. That's why in the presentation, I'm giving you a link where you can see a video which is doing the same thing.
Where did it go?
Okay, now, if you want, not if you want, this is also necessary to do it. Give me a second. We would like to have numbering here. 1, 1, 1, 1, 2. This is a style that you have to put, here we are. So the intro, I would like it to be 1, 2. So I just have to mention that, come on, is below this, okay. You have to specify the numbering style. And as soon as you have the numbering style, look now. Do you see? Question 1 is again another thing, but not question 1. This details is also level 2, correct? I change the formatting here using numbers. So what I have to do, I have to select, come here and say update the heading style. And now if I go down here, I will see this becomes 1, 2. So it's a formatting style putting these numbers, yeah? So as soon as you put the numbers, then you say use this format. And it will happen throughout the whole document. Now, be careful to do all these things soon enough in your document, because if you do it later on, it is a heavy, difficult task to do it. So if you set up from the beginning everything, so what I told you earlier, what is the nice style to have in level 2 questions, headings? Times New Roman, black, 14. And numbering as well. Okay, that's it. Update. So now, perfect. Is ready. Any question? The same thing I have to do for now layer 3. Yeah, I have to say that is numbers. Immediately it will do this for me. And I have to say update. So if I will update because I have another one on top, it gave me number 2. And now, this is one thing that you have to know. Look, I did all these changes. Do I see the changes in the table of contents? No. So you have two options here. Either you delete it and you put it, you create it from the beginning, which is also very easy, or you say update. Update what? Everything for me, because you have two options to update only the numbers of the pages or the entire table of contents. The entire table of contents, here it is. So just before we stop for the break, we were talking about table of contents, and we had the chance to see a practical implementation of a table of contents in a nice automatic way through Microsoft Word. And another issue that our thesis should contain is a list of all the figures, tables, and symbols and abbreviations that we may use. And you will see that there are two ways of listing the figures and the tables. You can list them immediately after the table of contents or in the end. So you will see that in some cases, people put the list of figures and the list of tables in the appendices of the thesis. I would suggest to you to do it in the beginning. So since you have the table of contents, after that, you will continue with any type of indexes, so the reader doesn't have to search if it is in the front or in the back, whatever, is everything in the beginning of your thesis. This is what I would suggest to you to do for your thesis. So what is a list of tables and figures? It gives you a list with the names, the titles, or the captions that we are using for the figures, and also the page that this figure exists. It is doing this in an appropriate formatting and is using the table, the page number as we said. You can consider that if you have less than 5 figures, you can omit using the table of figures. But if you have more, where usually you have more, you can have your list of figures or tables. So this is how it looks like, the table of tables. The table of tables, you will realize that there is also an indexing that you can have and the page number. These things that we see right now, I will show you how to do it automatically through Microsoft Word as well. You just have to follow a certain process that I will explain to you. What I will explain to you in a moment, you can do it by yourself. You can see some videos that can help you to revise and manage to do it at home. What exactly? How do you create a table of tables and a table of figures? So let me go through this. In Microsoft Word, we suppose to have some figures ready. Okay? This is my figure. The trick behind the implementation of a list of figures is to insert for every figure that you have a caption of the figure, where it's like a label of what the figure is about. In order to do that, you go where it says references, over here, references, and then you insert a caption. Now, the caption right now immediately is telling me that this is a figure, because this is the default status. But if it is something else, you have a list box here where you can select what it is exactly. If it is a table, we're going to do it in a moment, or something else. So right now it is a figure, and the only thing that I have to do is to come here and maybe put the label. So, smart robot. I just add this, and then I say OK. You will see that the caption is coming underneath the figure, and you can format it any way you like. So I have another image down here. I will do the same. Insert caption. So I will say stormy weather. And you will realize that immediately the numbering is automatic. So it takes number 2. You can also format the type of the numbers that we have here. But now, since we did these captions, we are coming over here in the beginning of our text, and we say list of figures. Over here it says insert table of figures. So in references again, on top over there. So we were adding the captions from this button. Now we will add the table of figures. The question is, what is the formatting? I will just follow all the default things. OK. So immediately you see that figure 1, smart robot, the page, figure 2, and in the same way you can create very fast all. You can have it as a second list after the table of contents. Please use separate pages. So if you see that the table of contents, let's say it finishes in the halfway of one page, the list of figures should begin from a new page. The same thing we are doing for tables. but the only thing that you have to be careful with a table is where do we place the caption. So I will insert a table with some data maybe, and now I want to have a caption for this table. So I go back again to references. So now imagine this is one of your tables. I insert caption in the same way I was doing it for the figures, but what you have to be careful here is not to add a figure, because this is not a figure, this is a table. So in order to change the type of this object, you are coming here where it says label, and you select table. And numbering starts from the beginning. So table, let's say week, days, list, I don't know. So, okay. And the important thing and the mistake that I see many times in some theses is that the caption of a table is coming on top of the table. So the caption of a figure goes below the figure. The caption of a table goes above the table. Okay? Is it clear? The Microsoft Word is doing this correctly, automatically. But if you use your, let's say, if you do it manually, you may end up with problems. You get it? So, captions of table on top, captions of figures below the figure. So, if I will add some tables like that, I can, let's say, create also my table of tables. I set caption, table 2, automatically, and I can come up here, list, tables, and in the same way, I insert the list of tables. Somehow, I have messed with the numbers. It's the same thing, yeah?
If you import some tables from Excel, you can do the same thing?
Yes, yes. So the important thing is that if you have tables, you are using tables. If you have figures like charts, the charts are considered as figures, you can do with the figures. So did you get it? All these things that we explained is also here in your presentation, is like tutorials from Microsoft Word in order to do the same thing. If you have no more questions, I'm going to the next issue, which is related to a list of symbols, notations, and abbreviations. Through these lists, you will help the reader to understand some special symbols that you may use, especially when you're using some mathematical equations or some statistical equations and so on. So this is an example how a list of symbols can be created. Any type of things that you can consider that is not self-explanatory, somebody needs more information about it, you can put it over here with the explanation of what it means. And the other thing is the list of abbreviations. In order to avoid any type of misunderstandings, the important thing for you, you have to be consistent. As soon as you said, for example, that KSA means Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, don't use the same abbreviation for something else. Okay, so as soon as you are consistent in your text and you have this list with explanations of all your abbreviations, you will be fine. These tasks that we discussed, table of contents, table of tables, of figures, list of symbols, and so on, they are usually happening in the end. As soon as you have all your thesis ready, then you have to sit down and create these lists. The trick or the important thing is that Everything that related to table of contents and lists and tables, you have to be careful to insert the automatic options from Microsoft Word, because if you do it by writing it just, Word does not understand that is a special field that will be used later on in a table of contents or list of figures. Any question? Clear?
So this list of abbreviations is only manual,
Yes, this thing you can do it manually, yeah. So now we go to the next big thing of today, the abstract. Why we call it a big thing? Also the title was a big thing, because you have to remember that a good impression from the beginning, it gives a very, let's say, a good impression to the reader, and he will follow reading your text with a positive, in a positive way. And you want this to achieve. That's why you have to be really careful to include all this information that we will give today for your abstract. So the abstract is generally a synopsis of your work. The abstract is the first piece of work somebody is reading and face the moment that you start dealing with your dissertation. And it is a summary, basically, of your work that normally appears after the title, the acknowledgement, and the list of table of contents, and so on, all these things that we explain. So what we have to be careful, it should capture the essence of your research. Essence means the main, the most interesting, the most important things that somebody has to see. So you have to report there the statement of your problem. What are you dealing with? What you are investigating? You have to specify your research methods. You have to announce the results. You have to also express or declare the main conclusions that your research has, and any other recommendation that you would like to give through this research. So it is a piece of text that it has a lot of information, but in a very short size. Okay? Yes, please.
Shall we have these titles as summer project in the abstract or within the paragraph itself? Because some papers, we saw that.
Yes, we have actually two ways of doing it. If it is a summary, an executive summary, you can have it like with titles, similar things, I will show you. But if it is an abstract of a thesis, you can compile it as one text, but answering these things through the text. So you don't need to put any titles. Usually, when you call something an abstract, it doesn't have titles. It is just a text. So it is a document, yeah? And is not just a collection of quotation of information from others and so on. It's coming from you, and it will summarize the whole document from your dissertation. And you try not to avoid any type of references inside the text. Something like, as you will see in chapter 3, the result is like that. So don't avoid any type of referencing inside the document. Try to make it, let's say, one piece of text that it can stand by itself without anything else. Because many times, even when you were doing your literature review, you just read the abstract, and then you decide if you will go further on in this document or you will stop reading it. So you try to put all this information. And also, you try to make it as short as possible. Try to avoid of having it, try to have it always in one page. And even if it is a full page, it is not that nice. Try to keep it like one So what you will say there, you will say what is investigated, why it is important, this research, and you summarize also your findings. And the abstract is a brief summary. You can consider it as 300 words. Let's say a nice amount of words and a proper size for an abstract. We have the research question there, the rationale of the study, the hypothesis that you specify, and the methods that you are following, and the findings of your research. You can include the design, the procedures, the sample that you select, and any special instruments that you are, or any instrumentation that you are using in your research.
Why
Yes.
put the findings since at the end we have the conclusion?
Because it is it's like a movie trailer where it's also telling you how the movie ends. Because this thing, it will give you, why we need the abstract. Because the abstract can be used for someone who's scanning the literature to understand if this thesis should go and read it analytically or just go to the next one. Okay, so basically you try to put the whole thesis in one paragraph. That's why you will have everything.
Similar to summary?
Yes, it can be considered an executive summary, but for academic, let's say, texts, we call it abstract. And for more technical documents, we can call it executive summary.
And it should be a one paragraph in one page or more than one paragraph, like 2 pages?
You can do it in more than one paragraph, definitely not more than a page. And if you see that 300 words is not a big text. So what is your main intention in the abstract? Is to grab the attention of the reader and persuade them that what the full document is related to, in order for him to go forward and continue reading it. And also, we aim to help the readers or the researcher to decide if the topic that we are dealing is relevant to his needs or not. We can have, let's say, 2 types of abstracts. The descriptive abstract and the informative abstract is just 2 ways of applying this. So in a descriptive abstract, you answer the following things. What is the text about? The issues or the problem that you explore, the purpose and the methodology of the research that you are dealing with, and most of the time you write the descriptive abstract before the project is completed. So you can answer all these things before you have the project done. And informative, on the other hand, is what the text is about, the issues and the problem that we explore, the purpose of the methodology, the results, and the conclusions and the recommendation. And obviously, in order to have this information, you must have a project which is completed and finished. If we want to put some rules or some good practices in our way of working, we have to think that an abstract should follow the rule of the 4 C's. So, it has to be complete, it has to be concise, it has to be clear, and it has to be cohesive. So it means that it will cover the majority of the information of the project. It will not be verbal. It will try to do all these things in the minimum amount of words. It will be readable and well organized, so the reader gets the information one by one. He doesn't have to think a lot, and it follows smoothly between the parts of the information that describes. What it should include, let's say the 5 basic things that will your research will contain the reasons, the problem, the methodology, the results, and the implications of your study. So when we say reasons, is what is the importance of the research? Why would the reader or the researcher be interesting for this document? The problem, what the problem does attempt or try to solve, what is the scope of the project, and what is the main argument. Usually, a full project may have more than one argument, and generally, you cannot put the full text of the project in one paragraph. So you just select the most important parts. You will include your methodology, which means you will explain in an abstract way the scientific work, how it is organized, and how it is going to be conducted from your side. You will have the results that this research project is coming to, and you can also reference some implications and what changes should we implement it as a result of the finding of this work, and how does this work add knowledge to someone who is reading your text. So, if we want to see what we must have and what we should not have, I have a list here of what we have to include. And you can, let's say in a moment, we will do some exercises where we will be, let's say, the examiners or the readers, that we will read some abstracts and we will try to evaluate them and say if they are good or if there are any problems. So mainly, we will try to answer some questions like that. So what the author did, how the author did it, what the author found, and the conclusions from the author. It's more or less the same thing. I'm repeating it in different ways. Yeah? What we should not include. So we don't need to put information not contained in the original work of the full document. So you cannot really reference things that does not exist in your study. You don't need to reference to other words. You don't need to put any type of explanations and lengthy sentences. And you don't put anything related to charts, maps, figures, whatever. It is just text. So we have to remember that the abstract is the first impression that someone will get from your work. So you have to try to make it as perfect as possible, which means that your abstract will be compiled, let's say, reformatted or work on it until the end of your project. In order to help you, I'm giving you some hints of how an abstract will look like with some cliché sentences where it is, let's say, standard. You can use them or you can go around them. And we say, for example, the focus of this research in the area of. So here we just say exactly what is this research is dealing with. Such a study is important in order to. So here we mention the importance of this study. Why we are doing it, okay? You remember the questions that we had earlier? The research approach that is adopted in this dissertation includes this and this and that, which means what we have here, the methodology that we follow. So we say that the research approach adopted is based on this and this and that. The findings from this research provides an evidence that, so we after that we follow up with what is the results of this research. The main conclusion drawn from this study are, so here in this way you can start the sentence where you answer what are your conclusions from that research, and you can conclude that this dissertation recommends that. So is what is the recommendations which are coming from the findings of the research. So following this, it can give you, let's say, a safe way of implementing an abstract. And now I have a couple of abstract examples. They are, let's say, structured in, they are in a structured way, so we can focus on each area. So in the beginning, this abstract starts with the motivation. And who would like to read it for us? Okay. Yeah. So what this abstract is trying to do?
Attract the reader. That's a very interesting topic.
Exactly. So it's trying to attract the reader that what is why this topic is important. Yeah. Any other comment? Let's go to the next one. Who would like to read? I want you also to follow on your, if you cannot really see from the board.
Research focus. This dissertation focuses on ways to assess the effectiveness of current preventive measures to cybercrime and to understand why organizations continue to be vulnerable to cybercrime.
Okay, so what we have here? The aim, yeah? The aim of this research. What are we trying to do? So what are we trying to do? The verb, as we were calling it earlier.
Ways to assess.
Ways to assess, very good, the effectiveness of the current methods that we use in order to prevent cybercrime. So you will realize that they are using the least amount of text in order to describe what is happening. Okay, the method. Anybody would like to help me? Yeah?
But in real abstract, we have not to write the research methods.
No. You just put it as one text. Yeah? But you try to follow, let's say, the structure in your... okay, research methods. Yeah, why not?
The research methods, cybercrime. This dissertation, Met-based twin research, aims through an extensive study of relevant literature and the implementation of practical research. The latter was carried out through a case study with company using semi-structured interviews with key IT security personnel.
Okay, so now we focus on how we're gonna answer the question which is related to the... So what they did? Can you understand it?
Through literature review.
Okay, so they studied what is happening already. This is what the first thing that they will do.
And you study companies X interview through interview to the IT personnel.
Okay, so they will do two things. First of all, they will try to find out what is happening through the literature review, and they will conduct their own study on a certain company in order to retrieve the information. Is the result, but can we, the important thing is when you read an abstract, try to see that, can you extract the information? If you can extract it and understand it, the abstract is good. If in the end in your head you have a fuzzy thing, it means that the abstract was not succeeding the aim. It was doing something else. Now, here it's a little bit difficult to go back and forth, but you have it in front of you. So come up with some findings that they had from the text. You can read it and you can tell me.
There is significant increase in cybercrime. There is significant increase in cybercrime incidents.
Okay. So this is the first.
Business
the first realization that the increase, it has an impact on the business community. In which cases, when the cybercrime is related to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. You see how it references many things? If you were doing this in a normal text, you could use bullets, one under the other, yeah? It is much better. In case of an abstract, avoid it. Avoid bullets. Use these techniques that you can have a semicolon or put things in a brackets and so on. So, anything else?
There is a lack of security expertise in the organization, and also a lack of awareness. There is a lack of security expertise in the organization, and
Okay.
also, as he mentioned in the end, there is a like a lack of awareness of the government recommendations on law enforcement.
Okay. So, do you understand? Obviously, they study different variables, different aspects of this problem, and all these aspects, they give a certain results. That's why, one by one, they mention it here. That is also why this paragraph, it looks that is the biggest from the others. Because you have to consider that usually people is not interested of what is cybercrime and if it is interesting and if it is, okay, you have to put all these things. But the most important thing in your research is the findings of your research. That's why we had it like that. Any question? Just keep it there, I will. Okay, and then we come to the conclusions. Do you like to help us reading it?
The main conclusions drawn from this research were that current approaches to fighting cybercrime are deficient because they fail to embrace an holistic approach, instead appointing for a narrow local software-based focus, and that lack of communications between major stakeholders at local, national and international levels has hindered security development.
Okay, so you will realize that the conclusions are not always very easy to understand. Why? Because in order to come to let's say, to understand them, maybe you need bigger text and maybe you have to be relevant or you have to know about these issues. So if you try to use more text there, it will become too much. On the other hand, try to keep it interesting as in this case. So more or less it's telling us that yes, we found some nice outcomes, some nice conclusions, and this is it, yeah? Do you want to comment something on that?
Isn't it a long statement?
Excuse me?
Isn't it a long statement?
Allow the statement.
Long statement.
Long. If this is a long.
Break
Yes. Okay. Yes. As a sentence is not. Yeah, that's a very good comment. This sentence is difficult to read. It's very difficult for the reader. If you keep it shorter, it will be easier for the reader to understand it. So definitely that's a weak point of this example, this long sentence.
It looks for me like finding, because it doesn't give any solution or recommendation for improvement.
The recommendation will come later on, yeah? So the finding is what we have found. The conclusion is what is the effect of what we have found. What are the effects? What is the outcome of these problems? And the recommendation is how can we solve this problem?
Recommendation after the
Yes, we end up always with the recommendations. So, recommendations. Who would like to help me? It's the last chance. So,
This research argues for a multi-pronged model to reduce incidence of cybercrime, one that takes into account risk assessment models, local management of company policies, implementation issues, including proper resourcing and review policies, the need for global support infrastructures, and the means of fostering communication networks.
Thank you very much. Any comments on that? So what they recommend? Excuse me? Thank you. Yes.
Companies should have a proper policies in place to reduce the incidence, and they may apply kind of multi-pronged model to minimize the crime.
So it's like it reminds us that the importance and what we have to achieve. And in order to do this, they also suggest that we have we need to have special infrastructure and to have a global, let's say, global way of facing this problem in all of its aspects in order to avoid leaving any gaps for serious matters. Okay, thank you very much. Now, I have 2 more abstracts. There is no point of going through them. Yes, please.
The first sample is now, which type of abstract was it? Descriptive or informative? Right.
This is the informative.
Informative.
Yes.
Okay. So will we have another example, sample of a descriptive one?
No, the descriptive abstract actually, if you remember what you submit yesterday, what you submit yesterday? A proposal. A proposal? Yeah, okay. When you submit this. Your proposal always has an abstract as well, right? What type of abstract is this one? Is a descriptive abstract. Because you say, what are you planning to do? You don't have results, it's a proposal, but it has an abstract. This is a descriptive abstract. The descriptive abstract from the other one, the only thing which lack is findings and recommendations. Is it clear?
Yes. So what you're saying now that in our thesis it should be the
Informative. Yes.
You can't use descriptive.
There is no point because you have results, yeah? And the other one is a descriptive one.
So we don't.
No, it was nice just to have it there all together in my slide. But yeah, put the important notes there for what is important. Thank you very much for the question. Yeah, very nice question. For the rest of the abstracts that I have there, I just use them as examples because I would like to move on to the study material where we're going to do a similar exercise, but we will use some abstracts which are a little bit longer. Now, if you please, before we go to this exercise, let's go to page 5 in the study material, page 5. What we have there, an example of an acknowledgement. Is different from the one that I gave you on the slide. It's just for you to have more options and more examples. Okay, you can read it and it's for you to help you. If you go to page 6, I have an example of a table of contents. But you will realize that there was a problem because it was a copy-paste from a real table of contents where the references are automatic in Microsoft Word. So before it was printed, it didn't find the page numbers. That's why it's giving you all these errors. So all these errors, if you like to cross them out and say, over there, you're supposed to expect a page number. Is it clear? So this happened by mistake in the printout process. So every time you see an error, it just happened by mistake. I just put all of it there for one reason, all this table of contents. Not just to show you the format of the table of contents, but also to give you a structure of a thesis. Okay? That's the important thing here. So the page numbers are not the important thing. The important thing is what is on the left side, where you can go through reading all these sections and subsections in order to get an idea how we structure a certain thesis. More examples of list of tables and list of figures on page 10. And now let's go to the exercise that we will do. I want you again to work in teams, because definitely you will read by yourself the abstract that you have in front of you. So exercise 2A, it is an abstract. There are always mistakes, okay? So I want you to spot what are the good things and what are the things that you disagree. And based on what we read in the first page, so this abstract, it comes from a project with title Factors which influence customers in Riyadh to purchase online. So that's the title of the project, and this is the abstract of the project. In the next page, in page 12, I would like from you to tell me what were the strong parts, or what were the things that it was included there and it's supposed to be there. What were some weaknesses, and the weaknesses can be anything. I couldn't understand the English, there were spelling mistakes, there were, let's say, there were content which was missing, or some information that it's supposed to be there and wasn't there. So how do you evaluate the information which is in it? Let's say you can say about the amount of information which is there. Do you think that the abstract should be smaller or bigger? And what are the main weaknesses? And do you have a picture about the study, which means that did you really understand what is this project about by reading the abstract? Read it first, and then work in teams, discuss these issues, and write down your answers. Why we are doing this type of exercises, you get my intention. In order to manage to writing something, first you have to learn how to read and how to evaluate the thing that you are reading. So if you are really able to evaluate this content, it means that tomorrow, if you write your own abstract, you are the one who's going to evaluate it and say, yes, I have to improve it, or yes, it is the right one. Okay? So I will give you 15 minutes to go through this first exercise, and please work in teams. We will go to each question separately, and all of you will... So maybe for the first question, first of all, use the flip charts in order to put up your findings for the first question only. Yeah? Specifically, we will go to the weak points as well. So, what were the strong parts? What were the strong parts? Who would like to start? Maybe from there, from the flip chart? Yeah, better use the red one, because the green one, maybe it's a little bit difficult. Yeah. Okay. Yes. The first question, what were the strong parts?
Well, we believe that the research methodology that he followed was good, although there are some parts that we're going to talk about them later, but we believe that the overall methodology that he used was...
it looks that it's okay, all right, and understandable. Also, remember that we're not judging the study itself, we judge the abstract, okay?
And also the findings, we think that he got good findings, I think.
Again, remember, distinguish if the findings looks interesting for you personally or if it is clearly stated. So you are talking about that it is clearly understandable and so on. Very good. Anything else that you would like to comment?
In the strong part?
In the strong part?
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, next.
I will start with
the strong parts, yeah?
Strong parts.
Yeah.
I think he started with a very good motivation, although definitely, but he has a good motivation. And second paragraph also the aim of the research, what he want to achieve out of this. This is the strong parts. But the weak parts in the research method.
Let's finish with the strong parts. So you say that the motivation was enough, but please, if you have any disagreements, let me hear them right now. Yeah.
I'll say only the motivation and research focus is the strong parts, and the rest are weak.
Yes, we will come back to the weak ones and we will mention them. So, any disagreement, let's say, about this? To add some more strong parts. Okay, let's go. Yeah.
Like the research focus was good because it was like the aim to observe the online purchasing factors which
The aim was accurate, you mean? Yeah. This is okay. That is the same thing, more or less. Yeah. That's why you are a group. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I think the abstract was well structured. It had all the elements that motivation, focus, methods, findings, and conclusion. Although the recommendation wasn't there, but it had it on sequence and it went smoothly, between the paragraphs.
Okay, one by one it was going smoothly. Very nice. Any disagreement on this? If you think, yes?
I think there are too many paragraphs.
It's too many. Okay, the information is a lot.
The information is a lot and the paragraphs are a lot. Like it says in the abstract, try your best to make it.
Yeah. Okay. So we will come to the weak points where we're gonna mention this. So more of the strong points. Somewhere here. You were all together as a team? Okay. They mention all the parts. Anybody else who would like to comment as a positive something different that we didn't hear?
We are happy with what they said.
Okay, so I will summarize. We said that the motivation and the aim was clear. The findings were also and the results of this research it was clear, it had a smooth flow in the way of describing almost all the parts, as you said, that has to be referenced inside an abstract. Very nice. Let's start with the weak points from there. From you?
My only point is that I felt it was general.
Yeah.
There are no dates to which the study was taken in, and the number of paragraphs. That's it.
Okay. Look, is it a weak point if there are no dates? No. Why? Because we have the cover page. The cover page explains which day this research was conducted. So do not include anything related to time inside your abstract. If you will see all the abstracts are starting like, in many cases, they start like this. Nowadays, the problem of cybercrime, so nowadays is always, let's say, very general. So in order for you to understand when this was done, just the date of the research. Anything else? From your side? No. Okay. Weak points.
No, she was telling me.
Okay. I'm going the other way around for the weak points, so when we end up there, they will say they covered our. Okay. We will use different starting points all the time. So all of us, we will say something. Okay.
The weak point, in my opinion, is the finding of this abstract. For me, as a reader, I didn't understand the output of this abstract from the abstract itself, because it is too short, and I think he can add more. Because he just put some, general information. He didn't come very specific, similar to the example we took.
Okay, so we say that the findings are not that clear. It's not that much detail. In the same time, the abstract is quite long. So why we end up with this situation?
The motivation part is
Methodology is long.
Yes, and the method. And he has used some terms that I didn't understand. Like the abbreviation, I mean, like the TAM and the ANOVA.
Yes, okay. All right, the ANOVA is not an abbreviation, that's the name, but
Abbreviations, maybe they should put like numbers, like in the book they put like references where to go, at least in brackets to put what it is.
generally we don't put references in the abstract.
Yeah, but you should not write TAM, you should write what is TAM. I don't know.
It's not really, we don't.
Maybe there was no need for him to go in such a detail there. You understand me? Because giving details that is not explained is just increase your, you feel that you don't understand it, yeah? So, do you get the point? If you go too much in detail, there is the necessity to say more. So the deeper you go, the worse is going. So you have to keep in a level which is understandable and general in a way that you don't have to come up and mention all these theories. I mean, what was the point here? Do you know what was the point? He was trying to impress.
Yeah, that's what we also...
Okay.
Another thing.
It is called, yeah.
He was trying to lead the reader to evaluate him. He said, the research carefully has chosen the 10 keys. Let me decide that.
We will mention this later on, and it has to do generally with the way you write. An academic document is not a marketing leaflet, okay? In a marketing leaflet, you want in 10 lines to attract the attention of somebody and impose your solution, yeah? If you do this in an academic document, the reader feels that you play the smart guy. You understand me? I'm just saying it in a very plain and easy way. So, yes, please.
You need to say that word carefully chosen 10 factors. The research carefully has chosen 10 key factors. Is this something to try to put his personality on the... This is a research.
Yes, using these adjectives, they will start creating a wrong feeling around your thing. It is an academic document. Keep it straight. We decided 10 factors, variables were decided to be used in this way. Putting more adjectives, it will, yes.
Yeah, okay. And I think you used...
Where is the mic? Yes? We finished, yeah? Thank you very much. Very nice comments.
To my mind, he used two-line sentences. In these research papers, there are a few sentences which I would actually divide into 2 or 3.
Okay.
Instead of putting commas there. And also there were punctuation errors, which actually made it more difficult to read and understand the meaning. And also in the problem statement, he didn't announce one of the findings which he put in the end. So it was said in the findings. He says, moreover, the study assesses the significances of gender and nationality on the study dimensions. He didn't announce that at the beginning.
Okay, correctly. Very nice. So let's stick now with the English. Short sentences are easier to be absorbed by the reader. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, dot. Dot means it's like you press the button save in the computer. You read, you save. You read, you save. It means that it comes into your understanding step by step. If you read the whole thing and then you press save in the end, you see the circle going around, yeah? And this creates a problem if we want to make it like a picture for us to understand. So keep your sentences as short as possible and informative, yeah? Very good. Also, try to keep the connection between the aims of the project and the findings in exactly the same thing. So, because the reader immediately start judging your work in a negative way. This is what you want to avoid in an abstract. You don't want to lose the game the moment that it starts. You get my point? More weak points. Do we have? Yes, please. Oh, okay, let's go.
The research methodology is only depending on the questionnaire. There is no any literature review, what's happening, what others say about this. It is only depending on the questionnaire, so one source of information. Second, he's saying 410 respondents. We don't know out of what, out of 10,000 or out of 1,000. What is the response rate? So maybe there is no need to mention the number in the abstract. So keep it in the detail.
Okay. If we really want to attract the attention of somebody, and the sampling size is always a nice way to, if it is a big sampling size, it is, let's say, a successful study implemented with your own questionnaire and your own, let's say, tools of collecting information, is nice to be in the abstract because it will attract the information. But on the other hand, it has to have all the information, and it's not much more things that he's supposed to do. He would say, in a population of this was the sample.
Yeah, but what if at the end I surprised 410 out of 5,000 questionnaire? So what will be my feeling at the end?
Well, this, you don't know, because you have to use all the tools that we mentioned in the academic writing, where you really have to find out for 5,000 people, based on the on your confidence factors, what is the sampling rate. Maybe this was a fine thing to do.
So like the 410 was a...
You will really understand this as soon as you go inside and you really start the... Yeah. Generally, what we judge here is not the study itself, the abstract itself, okay? So mention the information about the sampling ratio or the amount of people that they ask. It can be considered as a positive thing to do it in an abstract, but of course, you will be judged about this, yeah? The reader will try to find if this information is valid or not, anyhow, okay?
What about the chosen 10 factors which we don't know? You did not specify what is the factors. You say 10 factors.
Okay.
Carefully choose. We don't know what is the factors. It's not specified.
All right. So if these factors are, let's say, variables like names, quality, cost, and so on, you can use the other technique in a bracket. You just mention most of them or all of them. Very correct that you mention it, because so it has to be informative, and you should not leave questions unanswered to the reader, or else don't mention it at all. You understand me? What is the other thing? Exactly.
Yes. But what about the first point? Only questionnaire as a source of information. The theoretical framework here is only a questionnaire. Can we depend on only a questionnaire, or we have to go to the literature review?
Yes. Now, if he did it just with a questionnaire, the study, it has a problem itself.
Yes.
But what I expect is that he did the literature review, but he didn't mention it in the abstract. And this is a mistake for the abstract.
Yes, this is exactly what I mean.
I say that obviously, in order to do this study, I can consider that it was impossible to do it without a literature review. And I'm sure if we take this thing, we will go in chapter 2, which says literature review.
Yes.
So why it's not in the abstract? Yes. That's the mistake.
To give,
very good.
To give indication to the reader.
Yes, that he did.
One source of information.
So when So when you explain your methodology, you have to put the big things that you used in methodology. I use this technique, I use that, and that. In the other hand, instead of doing this, he went into details and he ended up putting up more questions than answers to what he's explaining there. Very good.
Thank you.
Anything else?
So, besides the repetition, what she said, the no recommendations at the end, I felt lost. What is the field of this research? I don't know what is it about. He is saying that factors which influence the customers in Riyadh, but I didn't get it. Whether is it social, technological, or what kind of, what's the field of this research?
So what was these factors? Because in a title you cannot mention it, but in an abstract you can start describing there.
You are taking these factors.
Okay, I agree.
But I think he mentioned something in the conclusion.
Yes.
What is the purpose of this abstract of the research? The last two lines.
Okay, let's go through the last two lines. He's talking about, again, about factors which are not described, yeah?
Factors not described, but the purpose
So,
to attract a new customer.
my friend, so what's the field of this?
The field.
of this research?
Yeah, he's not specific.
She's not mentioned it, yeah, it's not mentioned, okay? So, I think this was, is anybody else has some comments about this? About the weak points?
There are some spelling and capitalizing some words like research.
Perceived.
Yeah,
It's a repetitive word of perceived.
Perceived, yes, somehow. It looks like auto replacing thing, yeah? Very good.
One last thing from my side. He
Yeah.
said in the second paragraph, initially, this research is attempt to observe. So I felt that then he would take the research to another direction, but it was the same. Why he's saying initially?
Yes.
as the beginning of
I correct this very nice. Sometimes we want to use these nice English words where we say, on the other hand. Okay? So very often you see in a research, you read, on the other hand, but he doesn't start on the first hand, yeah? It goes directly on the other hand, and you say, okay, what was the other? What was the first hand, yeah? Yes, please.
But for the three dimensions he mentioned, I believe the first and second one can be combined in one dimension.
In one dimension. Yes, this goes now deep into the research itself, but you can argue on this correctly. Okay, so you see how things are going. As soon as you are able to put up some criticism, some evaluation on this text, it means that for you, you start understanding what is right and what is wrong, because this is the thing that we want to achieve today. So, how do you evaluate the information in it? Some of you already mentioned it, like, I didn't get it. So if you didn't really understand what is the research about, the information you can consider as minimum. Do you argue? Do you have more arguments about this? Something that you would like to comment? Okay, because we have to go to the break, let me go fast to these questions.
In the conclusion, he's saying there is no positive or negative. He said understanding the focus will help. It doesn't say, it's not a conclusion. I mean, I don't know.
He doesn't come with a decision, he just leave it.
What is the outcome? What is the conclusion?
Very good.
Was it positive, was it negative?
He's not coming with a real conclusion, you mean? Okay. Yes, also. Okay, so do you think this abstract could be bigger or smaller?
Smaller but focused, specific.
Hmm?
It should be smaller in some parts, but he should also add the recommendations.
So we had the feeling that things were missing. On the other hand, it was a one page full.
Yes.
Which means that definitely if you would like the same information to put them as it is, you could write it in a very much smaller thing. But if you consider that you had to add all the things which are missing, maybe you will end up with something in between. But this is as a common comment. If you have anything else?
Yeah, the number of words is okay, but there are overwriting of the methodology, as you say.
Yes, it creates a problem to the findings in reality. This detailed methodology, it creates a problem to the methodology itself, because you start asking me what is ANOVA and so on. And in the same time, we didn't have the time to clarify some other issues which are missing. So we can consider that this is as the main weakness as well in question E, that the main weakness is that he is not succeeding to pass all the necessary information to the reader, which that's the main aim of an abstract. And do you have a picture about the study? Don't tell me because you already answered it. Somebody else?
Yes, it's a little bit vague as well. It's not clear.
So we may understand the main objective, yeah, let's say what was the reason of doing it, but also there are things which are missing, like what was the factors that was analyzed and what was the outcomes in each case. How much I would give in this case? Well, I would say it is around 6. Yeah? Yes. Of 10. Hmm? Yes. Not out of 7, out of 10. Who said out of 7? Ah. Okay. Okay, but be careful. When you judge the whole thing, you judge the whole thing. You don't just say, okay, it was a bad abstract, so take the head.
You said there that you will allocate like a mentor for us. So would we send our work bit by bit to that person or just as a whole?
Usually it goes bit by bit. This is the last bit, although, yeah? The abstract. And this is the problem with abstract. Usually it's happening with a great amount of pressure in time, and it should not. This is a, let's say, common 99% mistake that is happening. So now we already complete, let's say, the introduction of, not the introduction, the first part of a thesis. Some of you already asking me, like I'm gonna do a business plan, or I'm planning to do a business project and so on. So what we discussed there is 100% relevant to what we're gonna do? Yes, because as you realize, we don't concentrate that much on the structure, but on the mistakes that we do on when we develop a text. So even if you're doing a business plan, you need to be informative, you have to use short sentences, you have to put all the necessary information. So more or less, the rules that we give here, they apply in all cases. Okay? So that's we select the to discuss the business, the master thesis in detail, because this is the length, the one that has the biggest amount of information to be discussed. But for the other types of dissertations, also it is very important to apply the same rules that we see today together. So let me go through the introduction of the master thesis. And this is the first chapter of the master thesis. And the good thing is that I will give you a very nice structure in order to make sure that your introduction will not miss any type of information. Because introduction is also an important chapter in your thesis, because more or less you will describe there the most important parts of your document. And to justify that is worth investigating. And it gives you an outline of the main issues and summarize the contents of the chapters which are going to follow in this thesis. So by the time the reader gets to the end of your introduction, they should have a clear idea now what the study is all about, why it is relevant to his needs, and what to expect from in the next chapters of this document. And usually, I just give you an estimation. It doesn't have to be 100% the same. You can have an introduction from 4 to 6 maximum pages. The introduction should convince the reader about the relevance of your study, the size of your study, and it should have background information, enough background information in order to put him into the context to be able to understand your arguments and the area of your research, and your review of available literature and reports should be further illustrated, should further illustrate why this problem is important and why you are working on this area. In the introduction, generally, you're going to state the research problem. You will set the stage of your research question, so what is necessary for someone to understand your research question, and it will present the rationale of your proposed study, and it should clearly indicate why it's worth doing it. You have briefly to describe the major issues that you will address in this research and identify the key independent and dependent variables that is going to be used in your experiment. You have to state your hypothesis, and you have to put up the boundaries of your research, the limitations, and the key concepts. So a nice, let's say, introduction that can address all the important issues should have these subsections. So if you take this as it is and you answer these sections one by one, you can consider that you have a complete informative introduction. So let's go very fast in this list. The introduction starts with an introduction. And then we have to state the problem, the aim of the study, the research model, the research question, the objectives, the hypothesis, the significance of this study, the scope and the limitations, the structure of the thesis, and the definition of the terms. So what is the introduction? The introduction begins with a few short introductory paragraphs. You just want to give the basic information to the reader in order to catch his attention as well. So many times you would like to describe the area of your research and give some details. And in this case, this is the only case we can consider that you can become a little bit dramatic in order expressing, let's say, the current situation in order to make it more interesting for the reader to go deeper into your study. So in the introduction, we have a statement indicating the relative contribution of all the collaborators, the co-authors if they are, anything which is related to publications, anything, emphasis and detail to the contribution, the proportion of the research, the size, and how do you conduct this research and how do you write this research. I have some examples that we can go through. but I would suggest to go a little bit faster because I have a very nice exercise that we will see later on, and we will face the same issues. So I will go to the next thing that we need to have in our introduction, statement of the problem. Any suggestion from your side? What do you expect here?
Research question.
The research question, it will come, but it will come later, a little bit later on. Okay? We have to define what is the problem. So we have to give some general information behind the... So a problem does not necessarily mean that something is seriously wrong with the current situation. Okay? It doesn't mean that it's always life and death situation, yeah?
Maybe it's about just challenges or a gap issues.
A gap, yes, something which is missing. All right, very nice.
Can we consider like selecting between two things in a problem? Because I saw one of the research here is
Yes.
postpaid bills and prepaid bills. So it is not a problem, but it is two options.
Where you can compare, yeah? This is a the problem is the comparison of these two things, yeah? Or let's say the problem is that you don't know what to decide between two things, or what is better. So it has to do with a decision, okay? So we can see if the gap exists and if there is a decision to be made between among some issues that is related to the study. What is the reason that we have to come up with the problem definition? The research problem formulation is the most significant step in the research process. And it is like if a person determines the address before anyone before you start traveling. So can you imagine the importance of knowing what are you dealing with? It is the most important thing before you start dealing with something. Yeah, if you don't really know what are you searching for, what is the point of start doing this research? So you see from this picture that we are talking about the foundation of your research. So you will be able to, through this problem statement, you will determine the research topic, and it will be one of the most crucial factors for your research. Let me go to the complexity which is related to the problem statement. So the problem complexity varies from one problem to the other, and based on the frequency, on the magnitude, on the symptoms, the ambiguity of the problem. So there you will realize that there are issues which are affecting the definition of the statement for your problem. So
why you have in-text referencing in your slides?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 instead of bullets, you mean?
No, in-text reference, the one between brackets in the previous slide.
Yes, because these are words that are not coming from me. It's referenced through certain researches. So it is actually a citation. Yeah? Okay. So the statement should answer what is the gap and the need that needs to be filled, what is the problem and the needs that has to be solved, and state the problem clearly in this early paragraph that you will have to write in this section. Usually, inside the problem, we see that there are some things which are always inside the problem statement, and this defines the theory of the P's, which is people, problems, programs, and phenomenon. And we realize that in most of the research, at least two of these factors are related and included. What are the steps of the problem definition? We have to understand the business position. We have to discover the main problem and the symptoms that exist. We have to compose managerial decision statement, set the unit of analysis, and determine the relevant variables in order to compose the hypothesis of the project. We have to gather information about the business environment from knowledgeable experts and managers who involve in the decision-making process as well. And we have to identify the symptoms. As a researcher, you can identify the problem symptoms by doing interviews or by collecting data from decision makers. And also, you have to identify the relevant issues from the symptoms, and the researcher should be sure that he is tackling the problem and not the symptoms, which is also possible in this case. Finally, we have the situation analysis end up by having a clear idea about the managerial objectives of doing certain research. We have to be able to determine the unit of analysis. So as a researcher, you should determine who should provide the data, so where the data are coming from people, from organization, from some other department. So these are what we call the units of analysis. And we have to determine relevant variables that we are going to deal with. So what is a variable? Do you remember maybe this from answering it? So we have two types of variables, dependent and independent variables. So what are the dependent variables? The independent variables? The independent variables are the variables that can affect our dependent variables, or they can affect our research. So we gave some examples like, okay. Yes, the outcome is usually the study of the dependent variables. Let's say, by changing the independent variables, we see the effect on the dependent variables, and based on these results, we come up with our conclusions. So we compose the research objective and question during the problem definition. We need, let's say, as a nice tool, we can answer all these questions in order to end up with the final document. So, how critical is the problem definition in any research process? What are the different sources from which the researcher can extract the problem? What are the factors that determines the complexity of the problem? What are the steps which are necessary from the researcher to take in order to perform the research? And what are the steps that the researcher should follow in order to translate and understand the outcomes of the research? So an example of a problem statement, we can go through this right now. So what is the problem statement? The frequency of job layoffs is creating fear, anxiety, and the loss of productivity in middle management workers. Okay, so this is, let's say, the problem statement. Can you continue reading a little bit this? So, any comments from your side? So generally, the problem statement, it can be 2 lines. But also, you have to come up with some description around these 2 lines. To support. Very good. Anything else? So we have an example of a problem's definition. What do you think that you need more there? Give dramatic and concrete illustration of the problem. When you are dramatic, it's like you are exaggerating. You just make it a big deal, yeah? So when you present a problem, you try to give the importance in the whole magnitude.
First, we have to say that the job layoff is increasing, and then you take us slowly to the problem. You have to,
maybe you can specify.
Not directly to the problem, but you have to explain a little bit before you reach the problem.
Like what we said earlier, the symptoms, okay? So we have to describe the symptoms of the problem as well, but we have to we said earlier that we have to be able to identify what is the problem and what are the symptoms, yeah? Not to confuse the symptoms as problems as well. Let's go with some examples. Where is the mic? Who would like to read it? Do you mind? No? Let's go for the first problem statement, yeah? So there are some things there, but I would say that the most dramatic word that is trying to motivate us is the word seriously, which in a sense, it's a little bit dangerous to do it. You have to be careful how much dramatic you will be in this case. Because since you state this, you have to support it. And all the words that you have there needs to be supported.
So it's better to remove the word seriously?
If you remove it by itself, yes, you solve a little bit your problem. On the other hand, you try to exaggerate a little bit. So exaggerate in a nice way.
But here also, if you remove it, there's a problem also. If you
Yes?
say no geographer has yet examined the remarkable discourses, he also denied that.
Nothing happened. Yes, very nice comment. So you can, yes, or you can change it with a different word. Yeah, enough or in depth or something like that. And maybe also the word seriously doesn't really connect very nicely to this text.
That means you disregard all the efforts done by
That was done up to now. Okay, any other comments? Okay, we will see more examples in the study material. But before we go to the study material, I will try to go through all these sections. So the next thing that we will discuss is the aim of the study. And this is another issue that we need to have in our project. Why this study is being undertaken. This is what we have to answer here. The purpose. It will be a single statement or a paragraph that will explain what we are trying to accomplish. So we can have some nice sentences that can be used in order to answer this question. For example, overcome the difficulty with doing something, or the goal of this study is we are planning to discover what, understand the cause or effects of. Okay, so these are some sentences that you can use when you are trying to define the aim of your project. There is a difference. We have to be careful between the objectives and the goals that we set in a thesis. So the goals generally directly related to the mission statement. stores it's short statement and few words, general, vague, and broad scope, covers longer time period, usually, and it's difficult to be measured. On the other hand, the objectives support the achievement of the goals. It has long statement and it is more descriptive. It is specific and narrow scope. It has a narrow scope, covers a shorter time of period, and it is easily can be measured. So what we would like to understand here is that the goals are giving us something that looks like an objective, but in a general way. Okay, it is always more general. Because we're gonna include our objectives as well in this in the introduction. So the goal is usually one, and their objectives are more.
So actually, objectives are sub-goals.
Yes, or parts of the main goal. We can consider it this way as well. Any question? I will go pretty fast because we will have the time to discuss more on the study material. So one more thing that we have to explain in the introduction is our research model, and here is just an introduction, yeah, because there is a whole chapter that will address the information about the research model that we will use. So the researcher identifies the relation between independent variables and dependent variables in order to show the interrelationship between the selected variables in the study. And we can read this, let's say, one research model example. So in this research model example, what we have, this research includes two main variables. The variable which are affecting the construction, project management as independent variable, and project success as a dependent variable. So the management is the independent variable, and let's say the variable which will be affected from this one is going to be the project success. The independent variables are the following: human resource, including labor, key personnel to execute the project successfully, the administration of the project financial issues, and the governmental and regulatory variables. So we have these independent variables, and what are we looking for? Did you get it?
Explain the variables and the correlation.
We will have these variables, and we will see these variables all together or in different combinations, how much they affect the project success, which means the construction itself. Yeah.
Apply this in one of these studies here. Suppose mobile banking need in Bahrain.
Yes.
So what are the independent variables?
Let's think some dependent and independent variables. Okay. So related to the need,
Or we take second.
the first one. Let's work on the first one. Okay. Give me some.
Mobile banking need.
Now.
The need is the dependent of the mobile banking of the mobile. So whatever changes in the mobile will affect the need. So the need is, or the surface is the dependent variable, and mobile is the independent variable.
The need is more or less the result that we expect, right? So this is going to be our dependent variable. Because this is what we think it will be, it will go up and down. Okay. So what we can have as an independent variable here?
The mobile usage and mobile banking.
The expectation. Well,
what will affect the mobile banking need?
yeah, don't think what is going to be the outcome of the banking need. Think what will affect if we need it or not.
Excuse me, I don't
Yeah.
understand how you can actually distinguish the variable variables from the title. I think variables come from
The problem
from the problem.
as well. Yeah, but we're trying to define the problem as well now, a little bit roughly, yeah?
I think the need is the independent variable because if there is an existing need, then the mobile banking will be changed. And this one depends on the
Yes.
need itself.
Maybe the title here is a little bit misleading, but you have to imagine that such a study, the company, let's say the company who's doing this study, will come up with a decision if they're going to implement mobile banking or not. Okay, so this is happening before we start thinking. Yeah? So what we will start studying? We may start studying the usage of mobile applications in general. So do people is using mobile applications today? So this variable, it may affect the need or the outcome of a need. Any other ideas?
Or if you want, you can take one of these examples.
Another example?
The impact of workforce diversity on healthcare organization successes.
Workforce diversity will be dependent variable.
Okay, the impact of workforce, so this is easier, yeah? The impact of workforce diversity on healthcare organization success. Okay, this is very nice. Can you tell me?
The organization success is dependent.
The dependent variable.
And the workforce diversity is the independent variable.
Exactly.
Like age, nationalities, religious belief, and so on.
So all these things that you say can become variables.
Yes.
So these are the
Independent variables, exactly. So in your study, you will select to start studying or collect data about these variables, and in the same time, you will see what is the result in any case. I think this is a very nice example, yeah, for defining this. Okay. So. In the same example that we had earlier, we can continue, and the project success is a dependent variable, which is also a function of another. It can be, let's say, affected by another three variables, like it will affect three other things: complete the project on time, complete the project within the budget, complete the project according to the project specification and quality requirements. So these three new variables that I put there, what type of variables they are? Can you let me repeat? We said that we are looking for the project success, and we start studying human resource administration, project financial issues, and governmental and regulatory variables, which are all of these independent variables. And we said that the dependent variable is the project success. But what do you see here is that you can express the dependent variables in more than one variable. Okay? So when we say project completion, you may separate it in different things. For example, how much it will be related to the time, or to the budget, or the quality as well. So in this case, I could say that we had 4 variables independent and 3 dependent variables in this way.
Here also, diversity of the workforce, we can divide it into different variables.
Yes.
Like gender, nationality, age, specialization.
Of course. The danger that is here, try not to make it too much. Yeah? Because in the end, the study will become very big.
Take take the most important variable.
Exactly. So let's go now to the research question. What do we do in this subsection? We express the research objectives in terms of a question that will be addressed in our research. So the research question is the researcher's translation of the problem into a specific inquiry. So, for example, you can say how much delivery personnel should be paid. Does the ratio effective compare to other measurements? So the researcher may state one or two, not more than 2 or 3 questions in his study as the research question. So we have an interrogative particle plus the research idea that we have behind it in order to formulate our research question. So it's like we take the problem and we express it as a question, to make it simple, yeah? It has to be the same, yeah? But we have to, the question is usually make more clear for us what are we trying to, because the question is always asking for an answer. So specifying something as a question, it is better for us in order to describe the reason that we are following the steps that we will do in the next steps. I would like to mention also that the research question, it has a little bit a relation with the hypothesis. In some cases, you will realize that the hypothesis and the research question that they are very close. In some studies, you can have only a research question without a hypothesis, or you can have a hypothesis without a research question. Usually, we like to exaggerate in our studies, and we put both of them. But yes, these two things are, let's say, somehow overlapping. So some example, what has been the unemployment rate in European Union through the last decade? Do we see what is the problem that is trying to address? Unemployment rate. And where? In European Union, and when? In the last decade. So more or less we follow the same structure that we were defining our research problem. The next issue that we need to have in our introduction is the research objectives. Now we try to become more specific. So the objectives are more specific and easier to measure than what was happening with the initial goals, the general goals that we were stating. It is about the description of what is to be achieved in this study. So more or less the objectives also is like putting borders in our study. We can have general objectives and specific objectives. The general objectives, they express the broad goal that we have in our research, and the specific objectives, they go in a short-term, narrow focus, and more specific. The research objectives is the goal that we have to achieve in our research. We have to be careful that we have to address all of them in our study. We should not set some objectives that we will not answer in the end. As you remember, when we were dealing with some of these abstracts today, earlier in the morning or earlier, we realized that we were setting up some objectives that, or we end up with some decisions that they were not set up as objectives. And we have to, let's say, properly formulate the specific objectives in order to facilitate the development of our research methodology, the collection of data, the analysis, interpretation, and the utilization of our data. Let's see some examples of research objectives. Who would like to help me? Yes. Yes, please.
To examine the pattern of part-time working amongst a cohort of full-time hospitality and tourism students studying at a university in Scotland. Or objective number 1, which ratio are most important in detecting performance risk problems in retail banking compared to investment banking in Bahrain? Objective number 2, does investment banking sector happy with these risks and is it efficient compared to retail banking?
So, how can you comment these objectives? Can you understand it? What we are trying to do in each case, let's go from the bottom up. Investment banking sector, happy with this risk and it is efficient to compare it. So one objective is to compare with retail banking. And the other case is to compare with investment banking. So we go from the general goal to more specific objectives. Now, how many objectives you can have in your thesis in general?
Four.
Yes. So usually try not to put too many. So this is working now. Thank you very much. Excellent. In order to write your objectives, you can use certain verbs, and these are some examples that can help you in order to do it. So, if somebody was looking on the next slide, he would easily answer also the answer of how many objectives we can set in our thesis. 2 to 4, it is a nice thing, it is a good. So 3 is maybe the golden line. So in an objective, usually you will try to say, I'm planning to find out, I'm trying to determine, or we are planning to compare, to verify, calculate, and so on. Some of the words that can be easily help you to formulate your objectives. This is, yeah.
You were saying before that we can't use the we and I, so in this case we can formulate the objective.
No, you can say this study is trying to assess, okay?
So it's still a word.
Yes, still.
So objectives only we have to state. That's all.
Yes, yes, yes. If your objectives are clear, it will help you a lot when you conduct your study. Yes, please.
In the objective, it's mentioned that does the investment banking sector happy with these risks and its efficient operation? So the comparison is happening between the retail banking and the investment banking. My question is
related to the risk, yeah? In relation to the risk.
But my question is that it's not an objective since it's highly subjective. Happy. So it's highly subjective work.
Okay, and we said earlier that an objective should be easily measured. It should be measured easily. Yeah. Okay. Now, when you end up with this type of words like happy, which in reality you cannot really use this quantitative techniques in order to measure it. Are you able to measure it? Because this is what you want to study. Although it is difficult to be studied based on easily measurable things, you may end up that you would like to do this study. In this case, the only thing, it can be there as an objective, and you will use qualitative techniques in order to come up with decisions. I agree, it's very difficult to assess. Is because it has to be with a lot of subjectiveness there.
I might argue, if I'm the owner of this project, that I might argue and I would say that subjected to be measured quantitatively with a survey. Satisfaction
Yes.
survey.
You will not be able to do a quantitative study in such an objective. So, putting up a certain effort on the objectives is just worth of doing it, okay? We can have objectives which are related to quantitative research and objectives which are related to qualitative research. And an example of a qualitative research was the objective just a moment ago that we were talking about. So we have, let's say, in the quantitative research, we have objectives which are measurable, and we can get the information or the necessary characteristics through quantitative, let's say, research or questionnaires and so on. And the second thing that we will face is we have the qualitative research. In this case, our objectives are non-measurable, and we have to provide mainly descriptions and relationships between these objectives. There are types of research objectives, and they can be classified in general into broad objectives, specific objectives, descriptive objectives, correlational studies, and hypothesis and testing studies. And we can, let's say, define that the descriptive objectives are these objectives that provide description for the incentives and to identify the points of view of the research, where we describe the incentive of, let's say, the Ministry of Education to hire non-native employees, for example. Or the correlational studies is these that they define the relationship between the variables. So you can either measure an objective, or you can use the connection between two objectives in order to come up with decisions. For example, you try to identify the relationship between the use of 4G internet to the effectiveness of downloading information. So here we have two things. One which is related to the 4G internet and the effectiveness of downloading. So you say, what is the benefit? When one increases, what is happening to the other one? And we have hypothesis testing studies, where in this case, the objectives is employed to make sure that the increase in the variable leads to the increase of another variable. So as soon as one variable is affected, what is happening on the other variable based on a hypothesis? For example, when we increase the production, what will be the effect in the GDP of the country? Usually, the thing that we have to specify, identify, or take care about is when we specify our objectives to follow the SMART rules. So we have to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So what do we mean about that? Is that we have to clearly state what we expect to achieve from these objectives. We have to be able, each goal should be measurable, so the research in the end can count the result of the objective. It has to be achievable through challenging goals, and it has to be realistic also, which means that we are able to understand, formulate, and so on. And And time bound, it means we will be able to have the time in order to study the certain objective. So as soon as we have our objectives, we can formulate our hypothesis. And in the hypothesis, I would say that usually the good studies, they include a research question and or a hypothesis, or in some cases, as we said, both. So what is the research hypothesis? It constitutes the backbone of our study, since it is a tool through which the solution or the explanation can be anticipated. So let's see some definitions of a research hypothesis. For example, we can say that is the conjectural statement of the relation between two or more variables. So usually the hypothesis will connect the variables with certain expected results. A formal statement that presents the expected relationship between the independent and the dependent variables, or a statement that, or explanation that is suggested by knowledge or observation but has not yet been proven or disproven, because this is our task in the end.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Is it a good practice to use the codes before we start the hypothesis, or directly we go to the hypothesis? Or we can have just a code first, such to explain what the hypothesis is, then when we specify the hypothesis.
The question is, when you state your hypothesis, if you have to include it inside quotes?
No, I mean, shall we start directly with the hypothesis 1, 2, 3, 4?
Mm-hmm.
Or we start with the definition with quotes, then list the hypothesis?
I would say directly with a hypothesis, because here we define definitions. I've seen that in many theses, researchers try to explain what they are planning to do immediately. So they say, because in our study we would like to prove this, we're going to use a hypothesis, where a hypothesis is this and this and that. And our hypothesis is, I cannot say that I'm in favor of this type. Usually we try to use them in order to put more words in place. Yeah. If you really feel that you need it, do it, which means that you don't have enough of information to put up on your project. In the other hand, avoid it. These are the parts that you can really avoid, and it will not affect your project at all. Mainly, when I see someone formulating a nice hypothesis, I fully understand that he knows what the hypothesis is. So keep it simple. Yeah? To say what is a hypothesis before you formulate a hypothesis. The question is, should I say what is a hypothesis before I start stating my hypothesis? And the answer is no. You don't have to state what is a hypothesis. Somebody who's reading a research proposal, a research thesis, he knows what is a hypothesis. So don't go into details like that.
Any recommendation for number of hypotheses, like number of objectives?
How many? Yes. Yes, we will give. Try to keep it as minimum as possible.
I have 6.
Yes, 6 is too much. You will end up with a very big questionnaire because you will need a lot of variables, and there are 6 dependent or independent hypotheses. This is another issue.
6, the relation between dependent and independent could...
No, the hypotheses by themselves. You just study 6 different things, or these things are correlated as well.
Correlated, same things, but would give more than alternatives.
No, this is even worse, okay? Because if your hypotheses are separate, okay, I have one hypothesis related to one issue, and always with a hypothesis, I have a null hypothesis, and then I'm coming up with a result. Okay, one result, and then another result. Then in the discussion, I may discuss both of them using different paragraphs or coming up with different, let's say, outcomes. But if these things are correlating and they are 6, actually, you have to combine one with the other 5, the second with the other 5, the third with the other 5. It is a problem that's exponential, yeah?
Workforce diversity, hypothesis here. Is the relationship between age and gender and the company performance, or the working different culture with the company performance.
Mm-hmm.
So we are trying to find the relation considering the age and gender and beliefs. Or different culture, different background.
Okay, this can be one hypothesis with many variables.
Yeah.
Also. So you don't have many hypotheses, you have one hypothesis where you say that all these variables connected are affecting this issue. If you have this type of questions, we can sit down also in a break time, and I can give you some more advices on this regard. But the general idea is keep it simple. And why a hypothesis is important for our study? Because it will provide us with a provisional explanation about the problem or the phenomenon that we are investigating. It will facilitate the process of extending the knowledge that we have in this area, and it will help the researcher to work on the relational statement, and which is easier for you to test the outcomes of your study. So it is like, let's say, a way of studying our, setting up our study and investigate it. We have two main types of hypotheses. We have the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis, and I can tell you that this goes always in as a couple, yeah? They go together. The null hypothesis is the hypothesis that suppose that there is no impact in the relation between the variables of the study. Usually you will see them as H0 hypothesis, the null hypothesis. And it states the opposite of what usually the researcher is trying to achieve. So, does, let's say, fast food has a relation with heart diseases?
No impact? No.
If there is no impact, it is the proof of the null hypothesis. Usually in your study, you start the study by saying that there is an impact from the fast food to the heart diseases. So usually, try to keep this in mind. Every time you have an alternative hypothesis, put it in pair with a null hypothesis. Okay? So if you end up with more than one alternative hypothesis, you will end up with more null hypothesis. More than one null hypothesis. Is it clear? I have an example of a null hypothesis here. Just go read it. I think it's we spent enough time explaining what it is. And this is what we explained, that the alternative hypothesis is usually the opposite of the null hypothesis, where we try to prove that there is an effect between the two variables. And there are here some examples. So there is a significant impact or relationship or difference between the first variable and the dependent variable. Or there is a significant impact for creativity on job satisfaction in the work of social workers in the secondary school in Bahrain. So this is an alternative hypothesis. Why? Because it supports that there is an impact, a relation, or anything that combines these two things. Yes, please.
So the objective of any study is to approve something or disprove something?
Yes. Let me say it in another way. If you have a study, you have the problem. In order to study the problem, you formulate a hypothesis, and because the hypothesis is easy to get an answer if this hypothesis exists or does not exist.
Then you answer your problem.
And this comes as an answer to your problem, exactly. And we said also that if you are not able, if you, let's say, you try to prove your, if you reject your null hypothesis, it's like you admit the alternative hypothesis. So these things are going like opposite. These are tools in order to help us to work with hypotheses. So you have different ways of, let's say, studying your hypothesis. One way of doing it, and it's a common way, is to reject the null hypothesis. This is a technique. Because if you reject the null hypothesis, you accept the alternative hypothesis. And this is called hypothesis testing, actually, is when we study what is the hypothesis. So first of all, we starting the hypothesis. The researcher needs to start with deciding and stating the population that this hypothesis will apply, and he also states the null hypothesis. And secondly, we are setting the criteria in order to make up our decisions. In these steps, we decide, for example, the significance level to be tested. When the researcher tests the hypothesis, he will gather the data. He will be able to illustrate that the null hypothesis is not true. It's exactly the same things that I was explaining a moment ago, yeah? So we may end up with, because we will work with samples, we may have problems in accepting hypotheses that does not exist. And this is, let's say, a problem in our studies where we have to deal because usually studies are conducting not using all the population, but a sample of the population in order to end up with cases where we accept the null hypothesis when it should not be accepted, for example. If you remember, these are what we call error 1, type 1 or 2 errors in hypothesis. I will go through these things a little bit fast because I'm sure that you're already familiar with, because I want to have some time for the case study that we have. The 8th subparagraph that you need to include in your introduction is the significance of the study. So in this section, you create a perspective for looking at the problem. So you point out how your study relates to the larger issue, and you try to have some persuasive rationale in order to justify the reason of your study. So you say mainly why you want to conduct this study, and why it is important, who is going to be using it, what are the benefits behind your study. Section 9 is related to the scope and limitations of the study. This is also a very important paragraph. Why? Because this thing has to do with assumptions that you take in your study. When you realize that there are issues that you cannot really deal with, you can come up with some limitations. So let's say I cannot measure a certain variable, so I put as a limitation that in my study I'm not, let's say I take the I make the assumption that the temperature, let's say, does not affect my study. So you take one thing that you were not able to measure and you just put it outside of your study. This will narrow down your study and will make clear to the reader that any issue related to these variables are not studied here. So they cannot really argue against you or put them as an argument against your study, the effect of this type of variables. Now, the question is, are these variables important? That depends on the study, yeah? You can also have the reasons, yes, why not? So you can say that this information, for example, is not available to us because they have to do with military secrets. So in our study, we don't really have the information why this and these things are happening. So it is a limitation, but it's also a boundary for your project. Just explain this to me a little bit.
So we talk about the limitations and why we couldn't enter some...
You say maybe for further studying? Yeah? The recommendations, they have to do with what you will recommend based on the results. But you can come up with what we call a further study. So you say, I already studied 1 to 3 variables, but it will be very good if another scientist will be able to study another 3 that was stated as limitations, of course. Okay, 100%. You can do this.
Basically, you look at the same project, but from different
Angle, yes.
That's
Okay, but generally consider the limitations. Sometimes I see that students, they say that, okay, if I put a lot of limitations there, my study is weak. You can claim that, but on the other hand, you put yourself in a safe position. Okay? Because you just be fair and square to the reader that, look, these things deliberately were omitted, because this is what you do with the limitations. That we also call them assumptions. Another part of our introduction will include the structure of the thesis, where it is a very nice thing in the introduction to make a fast-forward description of what the reader will see in the next chapters. So you can describe very fast what is happening in chapter 2, in chapter 3, in the next chapters, in order to have a general overview of the structure of your thesis. We will see this as in the examples in the study material. Another nice and important part of the introduction, it has to do with definitions of terms. Generally, when you have specific terms that will be used in your thesis, it's a good thing to give explanations, background information, or even definitions to the reader. So you will use, let's say, the word quality. What is quality? You will use the word, let's say, employability. What is employability? you can have these terms described into this section. Now, let's go into our study material. First of all, in the study material, in page 14 and in page 15, I have two more examples of abstracts. Definitely, we don't have the time to go through this in the classroom, but it is a nice thing to do tonight or tomorrow in the morning. What else you could do? I mean, I just found for you something to do. Okay? And you can follow the same critical thinking in order to come up maybe with some questions, if you like, tomorrow. So if you feel that if you go through these things and you realize that there are some things that you don't understand, or you don't like, or you don't have a clear opinion about, we can discuss about it. You will see that exercise C2, it follows the structure with titles like an executive summary, and is quite lengthy as well. So you can go through this and answer the questions in the end. Now, we have to go on page 18, and what we have 40 minutes, and it is 5 pages. So I try to find an introduction that is not very long as well, and we have to follow and comment on this research study and answer what you consider as the strength points of this introduction, what are the weaknesses, and I would like you to find and state 2 objectives from this introduction, and also I would like you to comment on the hypothesis, because maybe there are some problems in the hypothesis definition. There are more questions in page 24. I would like from you to define the problem statement for a topic. Write the research question for a topic of your preference. So this is not related to this project, but you can think something related maybe to your topics that you mentioned earlier. And also write for me a null and an alternative hypothesis for this topic that you selected. So there are actually 7 questions. The first 4 are related to the introduction that we have there. The next 3 are related to any type of project that you would like to have. Now, I would say that the last 3, we keep it for you to do it at home, and we start from that tomorrow as soon as we are coming here. So we mentioned some of this. So let's try to answer these 4 first questions. In order to have the time to do all these things, 1, as far as I know. Yes, we don't have any problem. Any objection? 1? It's okay. All right. Okay. Please work in groups, because if you work in groups, it becomes more interesting. Okay. So this thing, in the same time, is also the limitation of the project. So we say that we consider as failed project these 3 cases. Is there any other case, for example, for an unsuccessful project? Yes, maybe there are ethical issues, yeah, or there may be other reasons, but here let's say the author defines exactly what he means with the word project failure, yeah, or project success.
He identified the 3 measures: time, budget,
And quality. Okay. Where in the document he's doing that? In which part of the document he's doing that? In the definition of what is considered as a failed project. In which part of the introduction? He have it. He is using it in the hypothesis. Okay. So in the research statement, in the research model. Why? Because in the research model, he specifies his variables. So, very nice. So this is a good thing. Any other positive? Yes, please.
The problem statement, he said many research is done on the project management, but few done on the risk management, and this research will focus on the risk management, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, in the research model, he considered the project management as an independent variable, and he didn't touch the risk. Although the problem statement said, I want to study the risk, I will not study the project management point of view. So there's a big contradiction between the problem statement and the research model. You see here, he considered project management as an independent variable for the project success.
Okay. Actually, it is not contradiction, because he says that for me, an independent variable that affects the risk is the management. So this is one issue. Now, where he claims that there is not enough, let's say, studies about risk, in my opinion, it would be a nice thing to avoid the comparison with something else. He's trying, let's say, to be dramatic and make it give some importance there by comparing what he says, what he will study with some other studies.
Yeah,
this is a coincidence that the argument that he's using in one case, it becomes a variable later on. It can be a variable, an independent variable, management itself. How management affects the risk.
Of course.
Okay, it can be, yes?
But he's saying my research will study not from this angle, but from different angle. But he didn't do that.
No. Because it says that although there are many researches related to management,
but very few focus on the risk management.
So you understand? He says that many researches are related just to management of companies, but I don't find many studies which are related to risk management. Consider them as two different studies. I would say that, because I was reading this point there, it's an unsuccessful reason. Also, it is not supported by some reference. You understand? It is also not supported, because you can tell me that, okay, white cars are more than blue cars in Bahrain. As soon as you don't have a reference behind it, it's your opinion. It's not a fact. Based on the study, white cars are more than blue cars.
Than any color.
This is the nice way of doing it. So the mistake there is not later on where he defines management as an independent variable. The mistake is that why he goes with that statement over there, which really does not prove anything. Okay? Because he could also say that based on the literature research that will follow, we will realize that there are not many studies related to risk management. Enough. Done. Okay. But this is a weak point, yeah? Some strengths that you manage to spot. Reinforce the problem statement through?
In the research question, in the objectives and the hypothesis, so it's got the same theme.
Okay, so the good thing is that all the whatever is related to the objectives, the hypothesis, and the problem statement, they are all interrelated and dependent and coherent. Yes, this is an important task. an important strength. Because we already mentioned that based on the objectives, everything is going around and is related. Okay, we like usually to comment the weak points, and this is where we learn as well, okay? So let's go to the weak points now. Let's start from, okay. Can we use the mic as well? So.
Well, there are so many points here in the frequencies. One of them is the repetition, which is, for example, in the scope and limitation. We say that the projects are commercial and residential building. Then the study is focused on commercial and residential buildings projects in Saudi Arabia. There is no necessary to repeat it.
Very good.
Also, there is prejudgment, where he was saying that this research will encourage and motivate more researchers to study the relationship between risk management and project success. Like he is inventing this new. Also, he was talking about his personal experience, where there is also no need to mention that taking into account, he said in the hypothesis, taking into account the researcher's previous knowledge and expertise. No need to mention that, I believe, in the research.
As well. Stay for a moment. I would like to comment on the previous one that you said, where we say that other researchers will use this. Where exactly it is?
That's here, sir.
In 1.9. Okay. This is a very nice example of saying the same thing okay.
This research?
No. Ah, no, we are in the wrong. Sorry, yeah.
This research will encourage.
Okay. I was just in the wrong page. Yeah, page 20. Okay. In the end, this research will encourage and motivate more researchers to study the relation between risk management and project success. Here. In significance of research, the last 4 lines. Why your name?
Zain.
Zain. Why Zain didn't like that? I mean, is there something bad behind it? In general, is it something bad behind it? That a study will be there in order to motivate more people to study on this regard?
He's like saying my research is the best and it is success. His research, he's giving his.
Okay, it is still, but the problem is that it's written in this way that gives you this impression. Okay? The statement itself, it's a nice statement. You say that, look, gentlemen, through my research, I would like, or it will be very nice if other people in the future will find something interesting there in order, you understand? So it has to do not with what you say, is how do you say it. It can be an objective of your, I mean, it can be, if you want to, let's say, exaggerate a little bit, to use this as an objective. To say, yes, because I realize that there are not many research in this area, I'm doing this research, and it would be very nice if some other people will take this study and continue, because you can. Yeah.
I see a gap in this area, and I kill this gap.
Yes, but in the other side, you
motivate the researchers
yeah.
To research in this way, he's confident in it. Like this research will be a reference for other researchers.
Exactly.
Because he's one of who raised that. Everybody is raising into the construction in different areas.
Yes.
He's going to different.
Okay. So what I want to comment on this one is generally you can say things like that because it is nice, but if you try to impose them, use them from the side that, look, this is going to be so perfect that you're going to beg for it, okay? or
As assessor, how do you look at this kind of statements in a research? As an assessor?
yes, you are the evaluator. You are the evaluator right now. That's why we do this exercise. Immediately, you do like the cat, like this, yeah? As soon as you read things like that, which means that this is the things that you have to avoid. And I would like to comment on this one just to tell you that this is not a wrong thing to say, but the mistake is the way that he's stating it. Okay? It is stated in a way that it will just create some challenges there.
Again, he's saying.
How to state it? Yeah.
Yes, I would say that this study, you can use what we say a little bit more calm English, where you wish that somebody will get some help. Exactly. Okay, some more, yes.
I believe that it's also limited and uncompleted view of the main word, which is risk. Risk can be negative and can be positive. And what I see here is that he's taking it without reviewing the positive or the positive impact, positive risks that can be from the construction.
He decided to go to that.
Yeah, he should. Okay, he decided to go. Then, if you see the topic is how project risk management can lead to. He should say how negative risk, if avoided, will lead to successful or something like this. So,
very nice. Let me comment on this thing. So we say that the risk, it can be positive or negative. We imply, because it's not stated anywhere, that the author deals with negative risks. If we would like to correct this mistake, how you would correct it? Where you have to go in the introduction and mention this?
The first, change the.
In the brief introduction.
In the problem statement, you say we will focus on the negative risk.
You can do this, or
Change the project title.
if we go to the scope and limitation, you can go directly and say that we are focusing only on negative.
And even on the project title, you need to change because, as you were saying, how project risk management can lead to successful construction.
Yes, but be careful. This is not 100% what I say here correct, because usually in the limitations, you limit the input to the project, not the output. The output is limited, as you said earlier very correctly, in the problem statement. So it is better to put it there. I would like to mention this just to put you in the way of thinking. So usually scope limitations, they have to do with the inputs in the project that will affect the output. But when you want to limit the output, you focus to the, you go to the problem statement, even to the title, as someone of you already mentioned. Very nice. Thank you very much. One more.
In page 18, in the brief introduction, in the third paragraph, he says delayed projects are very common in Saudi Arabia. In fact, there are few projects completed on time in Eastern province where the research was conducted. Without any reference, you cannot judge.
Yes, to come up with this type of facts, or at least referencing that something that you will reference or validate in the future. So you can say, as we're going to see later on in this study, there are very few projects like this and so on. So This is a problem that is happening often. Is like because you want to be dramatic as well in order to attract the attention of the audience, you start saying things which are not supported, or you exaggerate. Very nice. Mm-hmm.
There are significant number of projects which are not completed on time. Significant number, but you cannot say there are many.
Even the word significant without a valid reference, it can be argued. It can be challenged. Okay? More? Now. Okay, the mic, please. Thank you very much.
So the problem statement here is how project risk management can lead to successful construction projects in Saudi Arabia. I think it's the statement itself is kind of an objective more than a problem statement. Am I right? It looks like.
Okay. How project risk management can lead to a successful construction project in Saudi Arabia is actually a question. Okay? It is a question. It's not stated as a question. This is one problem that start giving you some doubts of what is this thing, because this is the research question, actually. But it's stated like an objective, in the other hand, because we said that the research question is, let's say, the objectives, or the goal of the research in an interrogative way. That's why it creates for you this.
But here they say that it's a problem statement.
The second line they mentioned the question gives.
Actually, it's a question, but he omit the question mark. And he shouldn't say that this is the problem statement. He said to say that the research question is this one, but he was trying, he confused the problem statement and the research question.
Because I don't think that how the project is managed can lead to successful construction as a problem statement. I can't say that this is a problem.
Yes, because it is a question, yeah? It's correctly that you spot this. But it creates for you more confusion because it's wrong.
Again, the significance of the research is saying there is lack of research about risk management. You cannot be 100% sure. There is lack of research. That's a strong statement which you cannot prove.
Yes, because what he means behind this, he's always referencing to his project. He's trying, yes, to make strong that, and he mentioned a general statement while he aims his project which is specific, which is not all risk management in general, is risk management in construction in Eastern Province of KSA. So this is what he had to say, if he wants to be 100% correct. I see that some of you have some spikes behind the introduction. Yes, all right. Yeah, based on time, since we don't want to fail this project based on time, we will conclude. Thank you very much for your participation. It is really important. Relax, sleep well. Come tomorrow with more energy, because this course, as you understand, is based on you. Okay? And we will have, generally the plan tomorrow, we will go very fast through the rest chapters that we don't have to comment many things on them, because my main task today was to do the beginning until the introduction that was really lengthy. You will see also the PowerPoint slides that there are few, in order to have the time to go through the business plan and the Marconi University thesis structure as well. If you have no question, you are free. Thank you very much. Good night.